joint board meeting to order. We'll do a roll call for attendance.
Dover. Stratford, sorry.
Susan Levinson, Nottingham.
Christine DeBrio, Nottingham.
Amy Hanneman, Northwood.
Kerry McMahon, Stratford. Bruce Patrick, Stratford.
Kelly Gordon, Nottingham.
Rosalind Chopin, Nottingham.
Misty Lowe, Stratford. Debbie Henderson, Stratford. Stephanie Rayo, Northwood.
Keith McWigan, Northwood.
If it would please the board, I'd like to do election of chair and vice chair, and then we can do our presentations, and then we'll go back for the rest of the reorg. Does that work for everybody? So I'll take nominations for chair.
I nominate Sue Levinson.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
You did it, Sue.
Do you need us to help carry all your stuff to the other?
The person with the most things gets to be chair.
These are the policies, and these are the prior meeting to picture for
Holy smokes.
You want us to pass those down?
No, you guys can keep them because they're just, they're policies,
Okay.
so if we need to refer to them, it's better that they're in the middle. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it, and I know that we'll have a good year going forward. I know everyone, we've had some good meetings, and I know sometimes, we have different thoughts and ideas, but it's a great place to share them, and I look forward to it with all of you.
Thank you, Sue.
I'm sorry. We'll take a nomination for the vice chair,
Yeah, and then we'll take.
and then we'll go ahead and do the committee appointments later, if that's okay with everyone. Okay.
Nominate Brian Winslow to be vice chair.
Oh, he's not here. Oh, yeah, that's a good way to do it. I'll second that.
So we've got a motion and a second for Brian. Any other? Okay, all those in favor? All right then. Brian it is, I will contact him.
Easy.
That's hilarious.
You're gonna kill me.
Yeah, I love your work. Don't miss a meeting.
Apparently, you get voluntold for a whole lot of stuff.
First and then the audit.
Yep, sure.
I think
Or
I know who
always
always
That's fine with me.
Okay, so we have two presentations tonight. One is the professional development summary and presentation, and then the other is the SAU audit material. Do you have any preference in order in taking those items?
I'd like to hear the audit first.
Okay. Mr. Campo.
Right here, or?
If you want to sit down, you
Wherever
can sit
you want.
in the chair.
End up getting volunteered as the vice chair of the board.
There you go. Yeah, I'll just come right over here if that's okay. That way I can see everybody.
Do you want to sit there?
No, I don't want to stand.
Could you
Thank
possibly get on the other side of the table so I can get a good shot of you?
Why don't you sit right here, and I'll find it. I'll just sit over there on the side.
Thank you.
No problem.
I read it.
Excuse me for stepping.
That's right. Perfect.
So the audit committee had an opportunity to look at these briefly on Friday.
Yeah.
And next Friday, we'll be meeting with the auditors to discuss things in more detail. So if there are any additional questions, I know you're just getting it, it's a lot of material. We can, you can send those questions out and we'll make sure they're addressed.
So I'm Mike Campbell. I'm the director in charge of the audit of SAU 44 and the other member districts. What I'll do is I'll go through some of the high points of the audit report. After that, if you have questions, by all means. One thing I will cover is some of the more pressing recommendations that we've made, and then some that have already action's been taken upon. So to start, I'm going to have you go to page 1 of the report. This is your This is the independent auditor's report. This is essentially why you hire an outside firm. And for those of you, most of you have probably already heard this spiel already with when I came and visited the individual districts. But this is ultimately why you bring us in. You want an independent person with knowledge, experience, and the skills to evaluate your financial statements and render an opinion on whether or not what you see can be relied upon. You as the board, and then also if you're looking at the public, they want to know that the financials being presented are reasonable and appropriate. And then also if you're going out for any type of lending with the bank. So in there, you'll see at the bottom of the page, the section opinions. What you're looking for is present fairly in all material respects. That means that you have a clean audit report. You've met all the requirements under GAAP. And in your case, that's GASB. I'm going to have you jump now back to page 33. So page 33, 34, and 35, this is really a breakdown of how your revenues performed against budget, how your expenditures performed against budget, and then essentially just a breakdown of how your fund balance changed over the year as a result of those two performances. Looking at page 34, you're going to notice no appropriations next to two lines. We're going to come back to that topic. That's going to be a chart of accounts topic that we'll talk about in a few minutes. Page 35, you'll see that overall you had a revenue surplus, and then you had an overdraft of appropriations. In discussion with management, it was a little bit difficult because management in charge of these financials at the time was no longer here when we came to do the audit. What was conveyed to us was that the intention was to start reducing fund balance in the SAU by basically appropriating less from the individual districts and keeping expenditures on line with where they should be. So when you see a deficit or a shortfall of $452,000, it looks alarming, but from what I was told, that was the intention. The excess of 415 maybe was not as much anticipated. So overall, really all you did in this past year for fiscal year 18 was reduce the fund balance by $36,000. I have been told that since that time that there's new software that's been purchased through the use of fund balance, and that will help achieve the goal of the district.
Can I just ask one quick question?
You sure
on
can.
it? So just on the top of page 35,
Yes.
our unassigned fund balance, beginning balance, you had done some adjusting entries.
We did.
And you came to the 453, 469.
Yes.
And then the budget deficit was 36,517, leaving an unassigned fund balance, ending balance of 416,952.
Correct.
Okay. And I think we can understand that because we had some personnel,
Buyout.
buyouts, which that 36 I think looks familiar to us. But over here, when you're talking about the overdraft of appropriations, I guess that does seem higher than anyone would have anticipated.
So if you go back to Schedule 2, you'll see where that number is coming from.
Okay.
Page is that?
34. So with appropriations of roughly 1.2 million, expenditures came in at almost 1.7. And that's where that delta is coming from.
Okay. So we should look at the year-end
Correct.
budget and actuals
Yep.
and see where those pieces
Yeah,
came from.
no question.
Okay. Because I don't think that we expected that. And I think it's fair to say that the board feels that the unassigned fund balance might be riding a little higher than need be, but I don't recall having a mission to use it, if you will, to cover
Right.
additional
Okay.
expenditures.
Right. It should be turned back to the towns as much as possible.
That I guess is, and I think we've talked about this, that's going to be a philosophy of this board and how they want to achieve that. What I see typically in other SAUs is that they will assess each district less than what it truly costs to operate their piece. And instead of sending money back and forth, it stays in the SAU, they just contribute less the following year. And again, that's completely, if you decide that you want to turn money back to the individual districts, you certainly can. In my experience, what I see is the option that they just assess less each year, but the expenditures stay online.
So it still has the same impact of a tax reduction to the local districts, because they're,
It ends up being a tax reduction, exactly. Instead of turning money back, you reduce the assessment for the next year
yeah.
by the districts
So
proportionately.
if you were gonna pay in $500,000, you'd pay in $450,000, and
Correct.
the 50 would come out of this
Absolutely.
balance, and the 50 still wouldn't be raised and appropriated out of the local district.
Correct. What would end up happening is, similar to your individual districts, you would actually have a revenue line titled use of fund balance, and that's essentially revenue that is helping you balance the budget. So you don't anticipate receiving it, but it puts it in there so that your revenues and your appropriations tie to zero. No problem. We're going to go to page 9 now. This is essentially the last 3 pages put into one. It's just a quick and clean summary of the general fund activity for the year. And if you're looking down the variance positive negative column, you'll see that same $36,000 figure there. I'm going to have you jump up to page 3 now. This was GASB's big mission here, was to try to put financial statements for local governments in a position that they can be compared to private sector. Anybody who's spent time in private sector and in government know it's a difficult mission to go after, and some would say it's beneficial, some would say it's not. Ultimately what you have here is 2 different perspectives, long-term and near-term. Government-wide financial statements, Exhibit A, which you have in front of you, that represents long-term. So what it's doing is looking at your near-term resources and commitments, and also factoring in any long-term items as well. Capital assets, long-term debt, compensated absences, net pension liability, and other post-employment benefits. Page 4, you'll see towards the bottom, net position beginning restated, see note 11. This is GASB 75. With GASB 75, they required that the medical subsidy related to your retirement system contributions be considered as a long-term liability. So you'll see at note 11, which is going to be on page 25, you'll see what that total impact was. For the SAU, it was $236,000. And then if you really want to see the breakdown further on how that impacted you, you can go to page 16, note 2C, the accounting change restatement. That supports that number, that 237. We didn't just put it in there, we actually gave you the breakdown of how did we arrive at it. And I know what you're thinking, there's a lot of jumping back and forth. When GASB put together these financial statements, they really did not consider the user, because you do have to jump back and forth and front and back.
Are we going to go through also this letter?
I got it right here.
Okay, because I'm looking at the adjustments, that I'm just seeing that number, that 18,971. And that was a question we were wondering where it was coming from.
Let me pull those adjustments out.
And page, and also it's on 25, under the grant funds, it's for 18,971, and it's on the page 1. And the grant funds.
Oh, that, when we looked at it, I believe what we found was, after researching the item, that the item was incorrectly reported to the grants fund. It should have been in the general fund in the prior year.
What was the item? Where did it come from?
I would have to pull I can send that to you, I don't have that off the top of my head.
You can cover it from
In
there.
our
That's
audit meeting,
fine.
we're gonna want a lot of information on that.
That's fine.
So you're just reclassifying that.
Reclassifying to the general fund. I believe what we found was that it wasn't eligible for grant reimbursement, ultimately. So now, speaking of the letter that you all received, page 2 of that, these are our recommendations. Chart of accounts, and this one has been addressed since our visit, and it was part of the purchase of the software. What we found is,
I'm sorry, I don't think,
I don't think we didn't get the
they didn't get the letter.
Only the audit committee has the letter. You
Only
didn't
the
get it.
Oh,
audit
okay.
committee has it, but everyone should have the letter.
yes,
And
page 2 of what, of our package.
No,
No, letter.
there's a governance letter.
Yeah, it's on one. Why is the letter not?
Separate communication. It's not necessarily required to be shared publicly. However, where we're on TV tonight, it would be public.
And the public is paying for this, so.
Yep.
So does everyone have that?
No, only the audit committee has.
No, I just received my copy tonight with the audit, so Nate's going upstairs to make
Okay.
copies.
All right.
In the meantime, I can
Like our
explain
letter.
what I have in front of me.
From our town.
The first comment we had was chart of accounts. As we looked at each of the districts individually, what we found is that first, that the account structure did not line up across district to district. In terms of efficiencies, when you're doing state reporting or just general transactions, that's an efficiency you want to have in this building. Beyond that, when we compared it to the state's recommended chart of accounts, there was no alignment with that. That, again, when you're trying to file state reports and you're trying to map what was in your GL to what is expected from you by the state, that makes it a very difficult process. So in talking with management, they've decided that at the time of the new software that they would then go to this recommended chart of accounts and use that. And it's my understanding that's been implemented, so that finding will actually be cleared in the future.
And the audit committee's in receipt of that work.
Perfect. I think that's a pretty important step for this entity and the three associated to move forward. It's going to make things a lot easier for you. And then it's also, when you look at your individual district and you're looking at the SAU, you have some comparability in terms of what qualifies for what. As I had mentioned before, on Schedule 2, I had spoke to management about that. It was odd to see expenditures against no appropriation. It was in line with how it had been treated in the past. I believe that will be corrected going forward. It wasn't worth it at that point to continue to dig and try to break it apart. Based on the codes as they were presented, that is the correct allocation.
So you're talking about under support services, the 17870?
Actually, no, regular programs.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
there's no budget.
Oh, okay. All right. So the 161,451.
Correct.
Okay. So your variance, you saw the variance.
A large, well, no, it really was no budget at all. It's unusual.
Okay.
Why is there no budget?
Because in your GL, you had no budget there. No budget was allocated. And I would attribute that to just the chart of accounts in place and past practice. I believe going forward, you're going to see that shakes out to show a budget going forward. The next finding we had was investment policy. Under state statute, this should be updated and adopted by this board on an annual basis. That, I believe it had been a number of years since the last time that was done here. Fund balance policy.
We're working on that.
Currently, there is no fund balance policy. Under GASB 54, there should be a fund balance policy. In general, and what I've recommended to all of you at the individual meetings is, I'm a big advocate of seeing the policies rotate on a 3 to 5 year basis. Significant financial policies that gives you, the board, the ability to review them, be aware of them. I think I've given you all the example of a school district I went to and asked about a certain policy, and they said no. It was actually in their policy book. No one had ever looked at it. So, I mean, having a policy isn't enough. You have to be aware of it. Cross-training was another topic. You're going to find a lot of these findings I'm bringing up today are similar to what you received in the individual districts. One of the delays that we had this time around was change of management, change in audit firm. We kind of had the perfect storm, and then on top of that, we had the central piece of the finance department at that point, with the most experience, was unable to come to the office due to a personal injury. So that kind of kicked the can down quite a bit. And then what happens is we're dealing with budget season for you for this following year and a lot of things. So, I mean, what we would like to see is to be able to get in here in the time frame assigned and then go in and do the audit. One thing that will help you with that is if you have cross-training between people. If you're relying on one person to do everything, the district really becomes very vulnerable to that situation, or if the person just decides to leave, or whatever the case might be. And then another topic I wanted to bring up is, in your opinion letter, page 2, you're going to see a note about no No MD&A. In talking with management, what I typically will suggest to them is that if,
Sorry, could you go back in the letter on page 2?
in the report, yeah.
In the financial statement packet.
Management discussion and analysis, essentially management's opportunity over about 5 to 7 pages to describe what happened in the year. Beyond, they're not contained by the requirements of GASB. It's their chance to really explain to the users of the financial statements what happened, why it happened. With the management changeover, it's typical that that person who assumes it doesn't go and then prepare the MD&A because they really weren't there to experience it. They're not in a position to really tell you why what happened. They assumed it. It would have been different if the person who took over as BA had come from this office and had been here the whole year. You didn't have that. Next year that comment will fall off and you'll have an MD&A. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions you may have.
We had some questions, or we had a brief discussion about the audit. We had got the preliminary audit on Friday, and one of our members, the former CEO and CFO of the New Hampshire hospitals, and he was quite concerned about looking at the adjustments made in the back of that letter, the pages where we have all the adjustments.
So I think for him, he just, when we get together on the 12th, he's just interested in understanding, like, how far back did you, I think he was happy the adjustments were done, I will say that.
Right.
And I think everyone is pleased that you get a good fresh start and things are done. But he was just, in his mind, they seem somewhat material.
Fair enough. Materiality would be calculated by opinion unit. So in this case, for the SAU, you have the government-wide financial statements, the general fund, the preschool fund, and the grants fund. They each have their own materiality. In looking at that, materiality is a calculation we use for testing. Materiality of the users of the financial statement isn't necessarily the same. So what we had done is we'd gone through and had to, in some cases, whether it was the SAU or the individual districts, we found some situations where items on the balance sheet were able to live there for a few years. I think in some cases they had carried forward at least 2 or 3 years. The cause of that, what we believe is that when the previous firm had come in, they was looking at prior to current analyticals, it was a material that passed on testing. However, when we came in and looked and said, all right, give us a support this number to the penny. Otherwise, we're going to adjust it to what we believe it should be, with management's approval, of course. What we found is that there was some amounts that essentially had been picked up as a receivable in 1 year under audit. The following year, it was then processed as a normal transaction. So in doing that, it sat in the receivable balance for a few years until we came in and kicked it out. So that's some of the nature of the journal entries. But I mean, if on Friday you want to go through these journal entries, I can actually bring out work papers and share with you what we saw and the reason for the changes. Because frankly, it's not something we enjoy coming in and making changes. They're not our financial statements. However, in order for us to render an opinion that you received, they do have to be fairly stated in all material respects.
I think that's a good idea, and then we can come back and report what we found.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of questions about this, and I don't think it's time really to go through it all now.
Yeah, I do think, I can just to reiterate, I think it's good that they were made.
Right.
And that it cleans everything up going forward.
Absolutely.
And the next audit will be
Even better.
hopefully easier.
Yes.
Did anyone have any other questions, thoughts? Could we just, a restatement, there can be, major restatement and sort of minor little restatements. So we do have some restatements here because it's prior period. And I know I had at least one question about that. What's the nature of a restatement? And so
When you're looking at the restatement for GASB 75, that's due to a change in accounting principle. So the management, nobody has a say in that. We have to go and say, all right, retroactively, we have to go back to the first of the year and say, what would the balance have been had this statement existed in the prior year. So that restatement, honestly, is material in every district and every town I've gone to this year, because it is significant. It's the same thing when that pension came on. It's one of those things that you really have very little control over. Ultimately, the cause of that lives with New Hampshire Retirement, and they're currently trying to reduce that liability, but that would be the restatement. When we're looking at a prior period adjustment, what that essentially is saying is that when we look at that, it's either one or two things. It's materially misstated or it's just misstated. If we see that it's misstated and we believe that it's just going to, especially with the new software coming on board, we figured it was the right time to suggest to management, even, I mean, you'll see an entry here for 54 cents. We felt like it was the right time to clear those out. And management and discussions with them agreed with this. So that would be, the nature of it is the prior period misstatements would be balances that we believe and can support were not that at that time.
Good, so you've taken care of that.
Correct.
And then I guess the only other quick thing I had, under other matters, you talked about some new GASB pronouncements. So those are things that management and board should be aware of.
They
going forward.
should be. And I'll tell you, when I started, we were at GASB 34, and I haven't been around that long, and we're now talking about GASB 88. So they're coming pretty quickly.
Anything else?
I just want to say, I can see from just sitting through Stratford's audit and going through the SAU audit that there were things that were found, and I think it was a great thing to have fresh eyes and to continue maybe every 5 years or so to change auditors. I think it's a good idea.
I think once you get a good routine, it doesn't have to be that frequent at all. But
Well, one thing I can say, if you don't mind me interjecting, is that we have an internal policy that if I'm the partner on the job, we go to the client at the end of 5 years and give them the option, if they want to continue the engagement, do they want to switch partners? So at that point, you get a different perspective, and you don't lose the areas of the permanent fund and the internal control knowledge and just stuff, items that we can carry forward with our file that wouldn't follow me necessarily. So if that is a concern, that's certainly something that we actually do present to all of our long-term clients. We have some clients who have been clients for over 30 years. And we've made sure that we rotate staff, we rotate the partner. One thing that we have that some other firms don't have is we have an entire division dedicated to this industry. I think we're currently at 12 different people. I had one client who asked over the past 5 years how many different people have worked on our engagement, and our number was about 30. So I mean, that's something that, for that concern, we can certainly address, especially if there's no concerns over the fees.
I would like to thank you too, because I know it was a new engagement, and you had to come in a few times, and you've been very flexible and I think great to work with, and so I'd like to thank you for that flexibility.
Thank you. And I will say, with the management you have in place, I get to go all over the state, from the top to the bottom, both sides, sometimes in the same day. You've got a good team here. You've got a really good team. Mr. O'Sullivan and I talk, maybe not weekly, but frequently with anything that comes up, and I usually use that as a measuring stick of how effective somebody's going to be in his seat. If I only hear at you the time that we're coming to do the audit, you're either really brilliant or we're in for a long week. So I don't anticipate a long week this year. Scout's all right too.
Thank you.
So you bring that material on Friday.
I will. I'll have my laptop with me.
I figured out one of them.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll join you for that session.
Excellent.
I saw that. Thank you.
That's what it was. So.
Have a nice night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Bless you. All right. So we're all good? Everyone's good with that? Again, the audit committee will meet on the 12th and get the details and bring it back to each of you at your local level. Okay, so next on our agenda, we have the Professional Development Master Plan presentation with Mrs. Conway Frangioni.
Yes,
Would you like to?
sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy, and I'm from a teacher at Nottingham School. I'm also chair of the SAU PD committee. And this year we were charged with renewing or revising the professional development master plan. And all the regulations and things that we have a template from the state were the same that we did 5 years ago. So this year it wasn't quite as challenging as it was 5 years ago. I happened to be on the committee 5 years ago as well. So it made it a little easier going through the template and understanding what we needed to update. And hopefully everyone had a chance to look at the master plan that was given to you on Monday. On the cover sheet, there are some bullets that I was asked to develop just so you had an easier idea of what we changed in the plan. And ideally, the procedure for this is that we had a template we've been working for months on just revising the plan, and then from here, after presenting it to all of you, hopefully you've had enough information that you feel confident about what we've done so far. If so, one of the things that we need to do is to have the chairperson of this committee, myself for the PD committee at the SAU, the superintendent signatures, and then if we receive that all of the signatures here, then it would go to Co-Brown, to the headmaster for a signature, and then the chairperson for the board of trustees. So this needs to be totally completed by the end of June. What happened 5 years ago when we did this, we made our revisions, they went to the state. There was something more they wanted, which was actually a reflection, making sure the educators are reflecting on any professional development that they have, and then as a school, having those reflections on an annual basis as well. So we updated those, and then it went back to the state again, and then we got full approval. So you can see all of the things that were changed on that cover sheet. One of the biggest, I guess, because I had left it off, and then it was brought to my attention that we really needed to emphasize the fact that we're no longer being certified, that we are all getting licenses now from the state of New Hampshire, DOE. So everything for recertification was changed to license renewal. Certification changed to the fact that we'll now be receiving licenses as many other.
What does that exactly mean? Just different?
So it's just different wording.
Different,
So every 3 years, educators need to get recertified or have a renewal. We have to have a renewal every 3 years. As a result of that, in order to get that, we need to have, if you have one endorsement, you would need 75 CEUs or hours of professional development. Could be coursework, could be workshops, could be in-service. And then with every additional endorsement, you need another 30 CEUs. And it doesn't matter how many endorsements you have at the end of that time. If you have all that, all the requirements met, then we receive that recertification, or now called the license, and it is hanging tight at $130 $130 per recertification period, or each renewal period. So that's one of the changes.
Is there any other material changes to that, or is it just the name change?
Name, actually, I what's been great, I think almost the entire, I think all of the schools have, we have gotten all the information in. Everybody's been nominated by the superintendent, and I actually renewed on Friday and received my license today in the mail. So the turnaround was really rather quick. So so it's basically a lot of this is the same. I identified the pages. I don't know if people have ideas. We updated all of the activity options within the plan for what educators can use to have enough information to, and different options for getting recertified, from college courses, webinars, whatever it might need. And then there are limitations, and those activities are starting, I think, on the activity forms are on page 10, and it goes through and just gives you options, how many CEUs, which equal an hour, and how many you can use for all the different activities. So that was updated by the committee. And the 3-year individual professional development plan, which you have to have a plan in place in order to be able to do any type of activity or get hours for that. We updated the management responsibilities for the professional development committee on pages 12 to 16. One thing that gets updated each 5 years would be the matrix from each school, including Co-Brown and then the 3 elementary schools. So those are all updated from each school, and that shows everything that's for each school and all the different, what should I say for that, different data sources and how they're collected, the analysis of that, and different decision making that happens within the school. That also is kind of used as another way of having reflection, and then as it connected to that is an annual summary of student progress, and we utilize all that information to go back and see within the entire SAU what best meets the needs of the students and how they're progressing in different ways. And then we have the other real big change is that SAU 44 is on Frontline, and where everything is digital and online at this point. And so we went through the first process of getting our renewals from being online itself. Co-Brown mimics the online forms, but they are still using the paper. They prefer not to, they're not adopting the Frontline process. So that is something that is a little bit different as well. But everything is on Frontline. The 3-year plans, the activities that are happening, reflections that are going on, everything is connected with that. And we are just starting this week, I believe, also using Frontline, not connected to this, but also using Frontline for absentee management and getting substitutes. So that's a brand new thing that's happening that's connected to that as well.
I had heard in conversation that one of the options is that's being implemented is more of a project-based.
Mm-hmm. And yes,
Action research.
yeah, for the 3-year plan, and that is on pages 7 and 8, I believe. That 8 through 10, which it gives those 3 options. One, the first option would be that you have to accumulate 75 hours or CEUs of professional development for each endorsement. Well, it would be 30 for each endorsement you have, and then an additional 45 for the component 2, which is more professional responsibility. And then the second option is job embedded, and it's looking at just developing a focus that you want for the 3 years, a really large project, and then you would give every year you would work with the administrator and make sure that you're moving along in that. And then the third plan would be an option of both. So you could do maybe work on a major focus, maybe do a portfolio or something like that, but really focus in on something that you want to improve. And then you could split that instead of doing all 75 with that. You could do some CEUs and then as well as a project. So that's something that currently we have a few people looking at that, but we're hoping to encourage a lot more educators to at least maybe even do the combo of that and try to do something more than just accumulating hours in many different subjects versus something really, really large that you almost like a degree or get, with a college course or something, but focusing in on whether it's personalized learning or it's looking at a specific thing because you have a new assignment and you want to really learn more about what you need.
An exciting,
Definitely.
addition.
Definitely, it is. So,
Does anyone have any questions? And we've got a lot of people, I think, that might even go through this in their own district.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure. And the last page on page 74 will show you the full committee membership. And we have a teacher rep and a para rep from each school. And then we have administrative reps and SAU reps.
Have we had a board member?
Yes, Kathy Brosnan. We did, this current year is Kathy Brosnan each year. And then we also have a community member that's on the committee.
Because it says we're supposed to be getting updates from our representative, and I think we have to encourage that.
Yes, I agree. So
Mhm.
we have to determine which committees are
Right.
viable, if you will,
Right.
and then if you're on it, report back.
I think that'd be great to
Would
be
you
the liaison.
Do you continue to meet after, this is the,
Right, we, if we need to meet again, we will. We're hopeful that, you'll be supportive of it tonight and we can get some signatures. And, if you need more time, we understand that. But then, once it goes to the state, if there's something they feel we've missed, or they want more information, it might come back to us and then we would need to, either have our subcommittee meet again or, meet as a full group.
so once this is approved, pretty much this coming year, you won't be doing as much in terms of meeting as a committee, or?
This is part of the master plan, we need to meet at least 6 times a year.
Okay, so you will be, okay, so we keep that.
Right, and one of the focuses of the PD committee that I sort of took away from them this year because they needed to do that is to assist me in developing the PD day for next year. So I think they're meeting September 19th, is that correct?
That's our first meeting.
Mr. Patrick, too?
I have a question, I'm not sure if other towns do this too. Probably the questions you got, Mr. Rooney. We pay people to mentor teachers in our district, and we give them stipends for that, extra pay. Can that also be claimed for hours at the same time? Because mentoring is here.
And if you go to those activities, it actually does your first time as a mentor. There's on those pages it tells exactly for mentoring how many hours they can get that year, and then if they happen to do it a second or a third year, then the numbers change slightly. But I believe I don't want to misstate it, but it's on page 10. On the second page is where are they? Mentoring and supervision up to 30 CEUs of 30 hours per cycle that they can accumulate and
I
have that.
just asked that because we ran into a few years ago paying someone for something that they were getting credit for. It felt like a double dipping for some areas, so I think Mr. Rooney needs to think about that and look into that part of it. Wasn't sure, just choose one or the other, I thought, not both.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know. It's just,
I don't know for hours because I mean,
we're paying them for the hours, and
right. But when I go away to, okay, I don't want to
don't
put
even
myself up. But when I go, right, we get paid. Yeah, so you do get like if you go to a workshop, you're getting paid to get those hours.
Right.
That's true.
Right, and so mentoring, you're getting paid to mentor, but your mentor log would be your backup for justification that you made the hours.
Right, and then
Make sure it's clean.
Right,
and there is
right.
a cap for that because I've mentored in past years as well. But your mentee is able to get the hours, but the mentee does not get paid. The mentor gets paid and can also have hours, and then the mentee.
Well, it doesn't state that, it's just, that's what you, does it say that again? they can get paid and get the hours? I didn't see that.
No,
Did I miss
no, but what I'm just, in addition to, the mentee also is able to, the time that they spend, and they spend a lot of hours together, they're able to at least get hours that they can put toward their certification as well. And these are all suggestions from the state, so this is not something that we made up. All of these guidelines and activities have come from the state DOE, and we've this year we kind of went back and forth and really made some changes, because we were thinking that it almost, you want to have some a variety of things that you're working on, so that you have a more rounded experience, and therefore that'll help educators in the classroom as well, and with students. So these, we didn't make these up, these are coming from the state. And we've adopted most of them. So. Is there any other thoughts as far as how people are feeling? I don't know.
So tonight your ask would be for an action item for folks to put it to a vote, that they accept this, and then your next steps would be to submit it to the state?
Correct, but and as part of that, and that's something that needs to be here, and whether you can work through that process, would be to have the chairperson of the joint board sign it, representing,
Yeah,
and
I have
then
to wait for
right,
them
no,
to-
and that's fine, and then also for tonight, once that's done, superintendent, myself, would also sign, and then we would need to get it to Co-Brown for the signatures for that before we can send it to the state for approval. So it's time sensitive in some regards.
And you're looking for a little bit of project time in the event that they come back to you.
Correct.
And say, we would like
That's
you
right.
And your hard deadline to get all of that back and forth completed is at the end of June.
Right, but we certainly, I would say that we don't want to really go much beyond early May or mid-May to get it to the state, because we're not the only ones who are, revising this. So if we have a little bit of space so that we can get it there and get it back, that would be helpful too.
So I guess the question to the board tonight is, do you feel comfortable at this point? Do you have any additional questions? Would you like to vote tonight on this, or do you feel that you need more time?
I read through it and I thought it was really well done, and I personally would be happy to vote on it tonight.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. So in that case, if no one needs additional time, you could make a motion.
I did find one typo.
On page 10, CUE.
Oh, no,
Qs?
mine's on page 7.
Oh, because page 10, we did correct that one since I gave you, but 7, I don't know that and I actually read it over again tonight, so, yeah.
It's the very, very bottom part of page 7 under appeal of a professional development decision. It says if there is a questions. So it would
Oh,
just
yeah,
be,
okay, that one, and then just so you know, on the top of page 10, for clarity, and I actually have it already sent to Amy West. On page 10 at the very top, option 3 is a combination of less than 75 Qs instead of CEUs. So, and that was, that I found after, several read-throughs, so.
yeah, it's a lot.
And that jumped out at me at the very last minute, but not before. But we've corrected that one, and we'll certainly correct the one on page 7 as well.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the professional development master plan as presented, barring any other typos or spelling corrections that need to be done.
Thank you.
Second. Here comes the second. Yes. Okay, is there any additional discussion or concerns or questions? Mr. Patrick, would you need to have your question that you posed, do you need that answer before, or?
Well, I'm thinking further along those lines of stipend positions, and I hate to be the guy that's throwing a little wrench into this, I'll just question it. I'm a coach, I'm getting paid for coaching, I decide to use that coaching as a different kind of project and come in under number 18 other. My principal signs off on it, I'm getting paid to coach, but I'm also getting hours towards my CEUs. What's the difference between them getting paid as a mentor
Well,
and a stipend? What's the difference between me as maybe a drama coach or a drama advisor?
well, number one, under other, it would have to come before the professional development, SAU-wide professional development committee, and we would have to, just because you're a coach and you're coaching kids and having fun with it, it's more than likely that will not be something that would be accepted, because one of the biggest things when we're doing our professional development is that it's really based around improving student progress, and you're really focusing on your professional development based around how you're going to benefit the students, and you really need to work around that, and how you're going to become a better instructor or teacher in various tasks that we have throughout. So the other thing, we've set goals, so your goals have to tie in to the activities that you're doing for professional development, so those 3-year plans. I have to go and look, and if somebody is saying that they want to do basket weaving because it sounded like fun, and they're not an art teacher, but that their assignment, that it doesn't match, then that wouldn't be appropriate as professional development.
But number 10 says collaborative examination of student work and assessment data. So if you were one of those advisors, how people could you tie your assessment data of whatever you're working with into number 10, and looking at different learning strategies and identified learning needs, probably teaching strategies to students on
Well, sometimes people actually go and do, like, there's whole institutes where you go and look at other districts' work, and you get paid for that, but it's also professional development. So I know that one.
I'm just looking at the fuzzy line.
Right, and it has to be that, you can't just get together and say, oh, we're gonna look at these writing samples, and oh, we wanna get hours for that. That would be our professional responsibility, so that wouldn't come under this. This would be something that, it might be a brand new writing program, or it might be a brand new approach to teaching something, and then, as Kelly was saying, you might come together and say, how can we work this through and use it to improve ourselves to get there. So it's not going to be little things. As far as that goes, it's not going to be, oh, let's get together and do this project, simple thing together. It has to really be involved. It has to be something that, again, is going to help you become a better educator and also help students.
I think his big question, though, is balancing what you're getting paid for and what you're getting hours for.
Right.
And is it okay to get paid for something that you're getting PD hours for, or does the two have to be?
Well, if we, and then maybe the superintendent can talk to that, and he spoke to that a little bit. Most of our professional development days, if we, aside from a college course that we are doing online, most of our professional development is done during the school day. So technically, as was stated earlier, if we go to a workshop, we can use those hours for our renewal. We're also getting paid for the day because it's during the week.
And some of your para contracts have that written in too, so if a paraprofessional goes for a day, they get paid for that day. I think I might have another approach that might help you out though, with your question. And I'm not going to focus on the hours and pay thing, I think I've answered that. But Frontline, just so you know, has different levels of approval within it. So what happens, and tell me if I get this wrong, is in Nottingham, for example, just because Kathy's sitting here, and it's the same everywhere, the PD activity goes to her. She goes into Frontline, looks at the activity, looks at this, looks at that, and then approves the activity. Then it goes to the administrator. And the administrator does the same thing and also assigns the budget line potentially
Yes.
to where it comes from. Then from there, it goes to me, and then I give it another review. And then I approve it, and then it's
Once it's
paid.
right, and
Right,
one,
and then once it's completed,
it goes back.
there's another piece of paper that the person needs to submit that either is their reflection or their grade or this, and then that closes the activity out and approves it. So the frontline PD system, actually, I'm hoping that people like it, but it makes it more efficient. It gives you three different levels of approval, and then the culminating, like, I did it, here's my grade, here's what I learned, here's my reflection, and it goes back in. So I don't want everybody to think that, like, somebody can pick something willy-nilly. I've denied activities because they don't have anything. Like, I had somebody who wanted to take a grant writing course who really had no interest in writing any grants. And I denied that activity. And then they came back and made a justification. I ended up approving it, but I had to have those levels in there to keep an eye on the PD and the PD money and the certification hours. Now, I'll tell you, just so you know, and I probably could show you this, you've had 2,600 PD activities in this SAU this year. Like, it gives me a total and a dashboard. But we try our best to make sure that you are getting, some watered down PD activity and you're getting hours for that.
And another real nice component to Frontline, just as there's a catalog of activities, various levels, and that's something that we'll be able to access more in the upcoming years, because we're just getting used to the entire program. So that would allow people to do professional development activities online, and it wouldn't be taking away, it would be being done after school hours at night, whenever you had the opportunity to do that. When teachers educators take college courses, that's again done after school hours, during the summers, whenever. So there's a lot of PD time that's happening outside of actual school time.
And actually, even when I think about Stratford, do you know how you have that clause in your paraprofessional agreement that says if we have a delayed opening, you need to demonstrate the equivalent amount of PD hours? That's all done through Frontline, and then it's checked, and then it's attached to the timesheets. So it is quite a powerful system, and we are able to check things to make sure that they happen.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the hours that are done over the 3 years are strictly for renewal. People are not allowed to use those hours to accrue more experience that can be used on the step for payment?
You have no conversion in your districts when it comes to, like, some districts I've worked in. If somebody accumulates 45 hours of professional development, it converts to 3 credits for the purpose of the salary scale.
Correct, that's my question.
Districts don't do that.
It has to be actual college courses that you're taking in order to
Thank you.
move across.
Progress.
Good questions.
Yeah, that was a good question.
Did that answer some of your question? And are you comfortable?
I'm comfortable voting, yeah.
Okay, all right then. Does anyone have any other discussion or questions before we call the vote? All right then, all those in favor of accepting the professional development plan as stated? All right, opposed? Okay. Alrighty. So that motion will carry.
Mr. Rooney, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So on the last page of that, there was the list of the people that were on that committee, and I saw the school board representative, but I don't see that committee listed under our committees in our reorg paperwork. Is it from the curriculum one, or is it?
It should be.
Wait, it's a
Which number is it?
It's a committee assignment from here, isn't it?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought I saw it.
it should be.
Should be.
Staff development. I think it's a staff development one.
It is.
It's a staff
Staff
development.
Can you
It
tell
should
me
be
what?
professional
Yes.
development, really.
Could somebody?
It needs to be corrected.
Could somebody just tell me what page the?
77.
77.
Is that true? I mean, his staff, is his paraprofessional and professional staff?
It is.
Yeah, yeah.
Kathy was
Yeah.
the representative for the staff development though, so that.
Yes.
That is the.
So
Yes.
that's okay, thank
I
you.
thought it used to be called the professional development
It should
committee,
be called the
because
professional.
I was on it for years with your.
Yes,
remember?
Misty, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Debbie, I'm Debbie.
Oh, Debbie, Misty's there, I knew, okay. We met at,
I know,
Yes.
I'm dying to say that, but I did.
I know.
We have a mutual.
yes, you do.
Okay.
So, yes, so then we did for the SAU joint.
Really more professional, not professional. No one, right?
I don't think it means development for professionals, I think it's a broad term,
Yes.
professional development.
Paraeducators also receive.
Oh, right, like PED,
And
right,
then,
right.
Right,
I can
you see what I mean?
sign, and then, would you want me to give it to Jude to take it to Co-Brown, or do you want to do it from your office?
I'll take it.
Okay, okay, great. Then I'll sign it. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you, yeah, nice job.
Thank you. And then, once we have this, the original has to go to six. When you get it back, just let me know, and then I can finish up with that. So, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Kathy.
it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll move on now to the committee assignments. I'm gonna try to find which.
77.
All right, so we've got the chair and the vice chair. We have our secretary, so we would confirm
Nominate.
our secretary. By vote, we typically do that.
I nominate Amelia Tripp
Second. Don't
for
trip.
secretary.
All right, so we've got the motion and the second there.
Wait, who's second? Sorry. I'm
Debbie.
Debbie, second.
okay.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All right, no one opposed? You're abstaining, so that motion carries. 12 in favor. Next up is treasurer. Our current treasurer is Debbie Hinrichsen.
Nominate Debbie.
Second.
Okay, so we've got Mr.
Couldn't
Patrick.
get that fast.
All right, any discussion there? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we've got Debbie as treasurer. The assistant treasurer, I believe the board had appointed.
We usually have our, Amy West was the assistant treasurer, so that if there's an emergency, she's allowed to sign checks.
So she's on the signature card with the
Yes,
bank.
she is. She went with me and her name was on there, so I'd like to nominate Amy West.
Can I just ask a question? So I had Nancy written from last year, so did we change it at the board
Yes.
table?
Nancy had.
Nancy retired.
No, I know, but I'm wondering if we officially changed
We
it?
did.
We did, okay, I just
Yeah,
didn't
I
remember.
remember doing it.
Okay, I should have changed
I
it.
know I went to the bank with Amy, and I went to the bank.
I'll second Amy's nomination.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right then, so all those in favor of Amy West as the assistant treasurer? Okay, so that's, again, unanimous, 12 in favor. All right. Next up is the request for approval for the SAU to apply, receive, and expend all the federal funds.
So moved.
Second.
Who was the second on that? Oh, okay. Okay. So, I have one quick question on this. Right now, it's done in a consolidated manner.
Just one. Just one grant. Is
The
consolidated.
IDEA,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. If the board were to review that and decide that they'd like to see it done individually, it
Yeah.
wouldn't really matter. This motion wouldn't make a big difference there because you're still
You're
expending
still
the
the
funds.
agent. Right.
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 All right.
So it wouldn't go back to the individual districts?
Well, right now, the IDEA is done consolidated, but this motion doesn't
It wouldn't
impact
change
that.
this
The
vote.
board could still, if, you know, with the audit committee looking at it, could still discuss this and ask that be done individually, even if this motion goes forward, so.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to check on that. Are there any other questions or thoughts on that?
I have a question, I feel a little silly, but the federal public law 94-142 and then 99-457, is that the IDEA? for-
94-142 is
And then
IDEA.
457?
Is that the preschool?
No. Hold on.
It's lunch.
He's just checking that one item. And the reason I ask is that because that's the cash flow crunch, is that the funds aren't coming directly out of the districts, and so that's what's creating some of the cash flow urgency at the SAU that
The idea.
we'll be looking at.
I'm just trying to understand.
So the question now is what Federal Public Law 99-4.
Oh, 457 is the reauthorization of IDEA.
Oh, like,
They're both IDEA.
they're both.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Okay. Anybody opposed? All right, so that motion carries unanimously with 12 in favor. Any abstention? Or
No, I just have a good question.
Okay.
This is for the federal funds. Do we need to do this for state as well?
All your state is, it's federal flow-through money.
So this is where it would come from?
Right,
Okay.
right. So the federal.
So what about, what about the, like, the building grant type stuff? I
That's
mean,
building aid, that's
Buil-
different.
Right.
So
Right.
this is specifically to federal funds. So what happens is, the federal government decides that New Hampshire is gonna get
Yeah, block
this
grants,
much
whatever,
money,
yeah.
and then the DOE is responsible for allocating that out.
But the state also has grants that it does.
It has aid.
That's the adequacy money.
Yeah.
And that-
Among other things, but
Right.
yeah. We don't need to do something similar like this for the funds that originate from at the state level.
No.
Why not?
They come directly to the
It's
district.
individual.
Because we're not doing it at the
We're doing
SAU?
individual,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
So basically, we're delegating or authorizing our local board to the SAU to.
For the federal funds, but not
For the
any
federal.
state ones.
So REAP grants are local too, right?
They're federal, but they don't.
But we handle them locally. It's okay, I don't want to.
Yeah, so what happens, yeah, REAP, Title II.
Title IV.
Right, we process them and we do the paperwork for them, we do the reporting for them, right?
Right.
But all your grants are local except for the consolidated application or IDEA grant.
That makes sense.
And so, but the reasons for that are, you have itinerant staff in your IDA grant, so to break them out individually by different district is really difficult. Plus with the new grant system right now, Mr. Byrne has 1, 2, 3, 4 grants open. If we unconsolidate, now we have 12, and you're likely to lose some money there just because you don't have the buying power. But with that, tonight you have some information in your packet. Mr. Byrne has analyzed your 17, 18, and has sort of broken it out for reporting, so we'll go over that later.
The Title I and Title II money, don't our individual districts apply for that money?
Yes,
Okay, so then, and don't we receive it? So why?
you receive it at the same way you receive your consolidated money, right? So, let's take Title I, right? That's paid out of your SAU surplus and then reimbursed when we do grant reporting. Title II, same thing. REAP is interesting because it's not really flow-through money to the state. It goes right to your individual districts, and then there's a different kind of grant writing and reporting format for that.
But when I sign checks and do things, some of that money is REAP money for different districts. So you're getting the REAP money is flowing through here too.
Well, all the accounting is processed through here. You have your REAP money is not put together though. You have Northwood REAP, Stratford REAP, Nottingham REAP. Just like you have, same with Title I, same with Title II, same with Title IV.
Good? Everyone set? All right then, so that's moving on. Now we'll get to the committee appointments. So we have the staff development representative. I'm not sure who was doing that.
It was Kathy before, and it was professional development.
So this is the professional development one
Yes.
then. Kathy was representing them.
Kathy was, and you really need to be able to free during the day. It's a
So
middle of the
2:45.
day meeting.
So this year it would probably be 6 times, as she said, because they're not in the midst of doing this.
Yeah. And they meet right at 2:45, generally on Thursday.
Maybe Kathy wants to do it again.
Well, I'd actually really like to do it. If that's okay.
So, Mrs. Gabriel?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The Curriculum Advisory Committee representative, I think we had talked about this last year, and we were going to do that locally. So because of the competencies and everything that are coming up, and we pushed it back to the local level,
If we're gonna do that, should we-
if I recall.
I had written down that we were gonna have one representative from each district, but I
That's
only
good.
had two written down, because I think one board didn't have enough people on it at the time or something.
Okay. So,
I do think that it's, locally, our districts are a little different, so
Yeah.
it does make sense. I plan to do.
how often is this one meeting now?
Once a month,
Once a month? Okay.
What time?
8:30 in the morning.
So I mean, if we're gonna have local representatives, I would argue that we don't need a joint board representative on the committee. Right?
Yeah.
So we should maybe just
Just
eliminate
assign
those.
them locally at
Yeah.
your next meetings? Is everyone okay with that? So it meets, once a month at 8:30 in the morning, and whatever day works for the team.
Yeah, I mean, this year it's Wednesday.
Okay.
Doesn't need to be Wednesday. Doesn't need to be at 8:30 in the morning.
All right. Okay. All right, so is everyone good with that? You're gonna handle it locally. All right. The evaluation committee, this is for the staff evaluation plan as developed. This one meets during the day. I'm not sure how often.
Right now, they're piloting the changes they made based on Marshall and some other professional evaluation people, so you can expect that committee to start meeting again in September, after we just piloted some of our evaluation templates.
So again, it's a meeting that meets during the day, so who's available? Does it meet here?
Yes.
You probably just said it, but how often? Sorry.
I would say they'll probably meet 5 or 6 times next year. Our next task is to look at how we evaluate our paraprofessionals. In your previous plan, a lot of your evaluation templates and forms have to do with teachers, and that's not always germane to evaluating the paraprofessionals. So that'll be the next project that committee works on.
That's a pretty good committee, I think.
Is anyone interested? I'd like to volunteer for it, but I don't want to if someone else is.
You're the first one speaking.
Yeah,
so
I'll
I
let
think
you
it's-
do it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
you
was
are
only gonna
more
do
than
it because I
welcome
felt
to
like
do
no
it.
one else, I didn't wanna overcommit, so
Okay.
that's good.
I'm happy to do it.
The Stratford Learning Center rep meets twice a year in December and May.
I'd
That's
like
a
to do
morning,
that. I
morning
could.
board meeting.
That didn't, I mean, that was my
Yeah.
committee, but I was never
Oh,
told, I was
right.
told the meetings hadn't.
Stratford, right, they didn't set the meetings.
Yeah, that's,
So,
Mr. McMahon is
That's a good
yeah,
one.
throwing his
That would
hand
be a
up.
good one for me then.
they may not meet.
love that.
That's what makes it good.
Yeah, so here's what's going on. Actually, you would be good for this committee, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I was at a meeting last week or the week before with Stratford Learning Center, and they haven't had the board members come in because it was so hard to get them there. So right now we're trying to work on a showcase of what Stratford Learning Center does, specifically Charles Academy, which are those project-based, hands-on kids at the high school level. So you actually would be great to accompany me to that.
Sounds
It
good.
would be awesome.
Yeah. Is that okay with you, Eric?
Yeah, sure.
You sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Everyone's good with that? Mr. McMahon? Okay. The superintendent's evaluation committee, I think we do one from the joint board. It's usually the chairs, we've got one from each of the local boards.
Yeah, Bruce is ours.
So are we good with that?
Yeah.
All right, so that's done.
Who would be the other chairs?
Keith and Rose.
Sue, Keith, and Bruce.
No,
No,
Roz.
Roz, Sue, Keith, and Bruce.
And Sue, right, so,
All right. The Joint Facilities Planning Committee, one from each board, long-range planning in conjunction with CBNA. Hasn't been meeting?
I think I was on that, and
you are, I am Shane, and none of them we ever.
we never met. We never met. And,
Like, at least I'm gonna volunteer Shane again.
well, I mean, when we're talking about facility, I mean, aren't we, are we talking about the building again? Because we were on the facility committee
Well,
too.
what's confusing here is with the actual SAU facility committee
Yeah.
decided, I think, that they were okay and they didn't need to meet. Is that correct?
Because we signed a lease and we had
Yeah, we're-
new
Okay,
plans
yeah.
to.
And I think
was on
that-
that committee too. yeah.
Right, and I think that with, like, as soon as we slow down in a couple weeks, there'll be some other stuff removed and there'll be more room, and so I think we're okay.
We don't even need this committee.
All right,
Well,
so,
I think having a committee for just,
Yeah. But I'm not even
But
sure.
it's-
yeah,
I mean,
something
this
comes
is,
up, or just, keep your eyes open in case, like, there's a great deal that pops up, some building would be perfect, just arrives.
but was anybody on this committee when they met with CBNA?
wait,
Yeah, I don't understand.
Like,
No.
what is that about?
No.
Sorry.
I really don't know why
I don't
the
know.
CBNA is on there. I'm very confused with that, unless we were talking about the alt ed. At one point, we were talking about the alt ed, moving to the little house that Bill
Silver.
Brown had, near the parking lot there.
Silver.
So maybe we just
That
table
one.
this one, and
The
if
one we
something
meet in for,
arises.
the one that, Silver.
Anyway,
Silver Hall.
no, not so, at the house by the parking lot.
Or we can just populate the committee.
Little house with the stairs.
The little house
yeah.
by the softball field. At one point,
By
there
the
was
softball.
Oh.
So we'll let this one go, and if something
Yeah.
surfaces, we can
Yes.
address it at that time. Is everyone good with that? Okay. The management committee, that committee has been meeting on an as-needed basis, working on goals, basically doing what the board has, anything the board assigns it to do to look into. So right now, I had worked on the negotiating the superintendent's contract. We took a quick look at goals. We had some reporting to do to governance. So we're reporting to do this evening. So that's basically how that one goes.
Misty wants to do it for Stratford.
Okay.
She's been voluntold.
I've
It is
enjoyed
nice to
doing
have
it. I don't,
continuity. I
I,
think Sue and I are working.
I don't mind doing it for Nottingham if they're okay with that.
Yeah, you should, it's the continuity.
But it's up to Nottingham if they're okay with it.
I heard you love it.
Yeah, accurate.
Okay, so everyone's okay with that?
Yes.
All right. The Technology Committee, 2 board representatives.
I'm happy to do it again, if no one else wants to do it. The reason I keep saying that is because, I don't know about other boards, but I think it's good for all of us to sort of rotate committees every now and again. And so I've done it for 2 years, and I really like it, but I'm happy to have someone else do it if they'd like to get an understanding of what we do. So, I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, I'm saying, I did it, and so I have to do it. I did it, I
I'd
like
fight you
it.
for it if I wanted it, but I.
It's a gift.
I just want you to know I would.
It's so that you have a background or some interest in technology as well.
So, Keith, did you want to do it?
I'll do it if nobody else wants to, yeah.
Is everyone good with Keith? And Rosalind?
I'm good with Keith.
Yeah.
All right. The Alt Ed Committee, 1 from each board. I don't have that.
it, I'll do it again.
All right. Okay.
One from each board.
And
So Eric and I both did it last year, but it sounds like we only need one of us.
Erica, you want it?
Sure.
Okay, so who?
Erica for Stratford.
Erica. Okay.
We just did Northwood. Oh, you got
Oh, we
stuff?
do. Step.
And how often does it meet?
We
Met once.
once
When I
this
was
year.
sick.
As required.
I was, I went out of work for 3 days.
Oh my God.
The one first day of school. I was out for.
Is there like a typical time
No, it's just if we see a
when
need
things
for
come
it.
up?
Yeah.
Okay.
The special education audit committee, that was from the past, and a report that was done, so we're not doing that. We didn't have a policy
No.
committee.
Just bring them right here.
I'd really like to do audit. I've done it one year, but just to try to close up, we're in the midst of so many things that I.
Debbie.
I'll do it again too. I mean, we're in the middle of doing this.
Unless you
We're
don't
not
want
done
to, you do such a nice job. I'm just.
It's for the continuity because the audit we just received, we're still working on that, on analyzing it. We have, questions, and we're also working on the policy for our fund balance.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that.
Who was
I'm
the third
sorry.
person?
It was Amy.
Amy.
I wasn't able to come, but now I'm getting a different job, so I should have Fridays off.
We usually do meet on Friday, and so you.
I could still do it again, yeah.
Is anyone else interested in
Okay, so. And you're gonna do it, Amy?
Sure.
Okay.
Mr. Rooney just did make a comment, and I have to say,
And
looking
it was
at.
appropriate.
Yes, yes. Looking at those financials, the overspend looked big, so I'm thinking at a future meeting, we should take the actual budget and look at that.
Well, yeah, because your financials say you're overspent by $36,000, but your audit says something different. So I'm going to make it a point for Mr. O'Sullivan and I both to come Friday when the auditor's here and probe that, because that isn't what
That
I
seems
understood at
significant.
the year's end close.
Right.
I don't think that's what anybody here understood
Right.
at the year end close.
Right.
So I don't know if it was just a statement or I don't know, but it was very concerning to me.
There wasn't $800,000.
Well, no, there wasn't. So there's some sort of error there, so we'll go through that.
We'll dig into that too on the 12th and try to get a better answer, because I assume the board is curious, at least, about how that could transpire, because we didn't see that throughout the whole period, looking at the numbers.
It's good that we have new auditors.
All right, so that's moving on from the boards, the committees. Everyone's fine with all that?
Yeah, I do have a question since I'm on a new committee. How will I know when they meet?
Which committee are you on?
That first one, this professional development one.
You'll get an email.
Automatically, I don't need to let someone specific know that that's me. You're on.
No, I got that. It's all written down. What happened tomorrow is Amy will process it and then put you on that committee. When somebody goes to schedule that committee, you'll be emailed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then moving on to policy BCA, which is the Code of Ethics for Board Members on page 79. Everyone's seen that before, and then we have a page to circulate for folks to, there we go. So that will circulate. That's the signature page, and you can review the item on page 79. Any questions or concerns about that? Okay. Public comment, do we have any public comment at this time? Okay. Okay, making sure. All right. All right, we'll move on to the approval of minutes from February 11th on page 82.
Sue, are you, oh, forget it. I'm fine. There I am.
All right, so page, I guess I said 89, I think, but I think it's page 82.
I'm just looking at, this isn't a correction, this is just something I'm bringing up. Page 83, line 45, that I was asking that we would have a running balance of the fund balance account at our monthly meeting, so I just wanted to make sure we have that.
Okay. And I think we can probably, on the 12th, that's one of the items to get the actual, you know. All right, moving on to 83, was there anything there?
Amelia?
Yes.
Kathy Boston's name is misspelled.
What line are you
There
on?
should be an E, it's at the
Oh,
very
an
top.
E at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on to page 84. '85. '86. '87. And that's that.
Did somebody make a motion to approve the minutes?
No, we need the motion in a second.
So I'll make a motion to approve the joint board meeting minutes from February 11th, 2019.
I'll second.
Okay.
I should have said both public and non-public.
So,
Or do you want me to do that separate?
It doesn't matter. If there's nothing there, you can take a quick look at non-public on page 89.
so can I go back to page 87?
Sure.
On page 87, line 250, there's a motion that was seconded, but I think we should record just the vote. I assume the vote was a 9-0, but the motion just says,
What are you, what,
oh wait.
what line?
Line 250.
251,
There was a roll call as well
right.
going in.
It just says 9 members are present, I think 9 members voted.
It's always
for it as
important to record the actual votes,
Yeah.
because occasionally we have to go back, and it's confusing if, in fact, the actual vote counts now.
I will have that data in my packet from the prior meeting, because I always check it. So there was a roll call, and there was also a reason given, 91A. So we'll need to document that as well. So,
The RSA, Amelia, we just have to put that in too. Why not?
RSA 90,
Right.
91A.
A and C.
2, I think it was A and C, but I can confirm that.
Well,
In the
you
morning.
wanted to
On
discuss
89,
this-
it's-
You went in to discuss the superintendent contract, so.
I think actually
I
on
think we
page
had C as
89
well.
just needs to bounce back over into the body of the minutes.
So we can make your vote pending getting that data from my file and providing it to our
It is
secretary.
listed here, yeah.
It's, Sue, it's all there on 89. She
It is
just
A and C, I have it here.
Oh, okay.
transfer the information back.
All right,
I have the counts too. Do you want me to just pass them down?
excellent. All right. Is there anything else? Okay,
You
so
can
the
take that with you, Amelia, if you want. Everybody who was here said yes.
Okay.
The motion was made to approve the public meeting minutes. Did you want to amend that to include the non-public as well? All right.
Yes, please.
And the second is fine with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, so all those in favor of approving the public and non-public meeting minutes as amended of February 11th, 2019?
Aye.
All right, anyone abstaining? All right, so we have 10 in favor and 2 abstentions. Anyone opposed? Okay. All right. The manifests are circulating, I believe. Okay. All right, now we're up to page 90, the new business administrator's report.
It's to be quick. We, as a budget versus expenditures, were just a pinch over $29,000 to the good. We are going to be in the black at the end of the year. That's good. That's really all I have to report on expenses. On the revenue side, which I don't typically include, the revenues are in line with all expectations. You're going to see a number of revenue lines that are things like OT Northwood and Special Ed, Coordinator Nottingham. These are all the pass-through monies that actually are reflected at the district level that we are collecting and then sending right back out as an expense. So nothing there. And then the $150,000 that you all requested be dispersed from the fund balance has been completed, and I think every single board has seen the actual proof of that. And on the Tyler update, we're actively going through all the work that requires things like all the permissions and who, what order of events. Somebody starts a requisition and then the building principal has to approve, and then it comes over here and so on. Somebody else changes it to a purchase order and it's approved. So that work is well underway. You heard the comments from the Mike Campo about the chart of accounts. The audit committee has the work that has been done there. The new lines with the restated revenues for your 2020 budget have been aligned with the new chart of accounts. We are going to be restating the history from starting with 2017-18, so we have 2 years of history. And that will all be stated with the removal of, I'll call it, orphan lines that are just flat out erroneous. So they're aligned as is your 2020 budget. And then once the 2018-19 has been closed out and we're satisfied with that, that work will be then restated for purposes of the new chart of accounts. So that come July, or well, really for the budgeting season, when you want to see historical data, you'll have accurate historical data that's aligned with the new chart of accounts. Starting July 1st, we will have and be using the new charge accounts. Some of them haven't changed, but we want to make sure that any purchase orders are actually being, we're accumulating them, as there's a few of them that have already trickled in for next budget year, and we're holding them until we start with Infinite Visions, which is the new software, on July 1st. So things are moving along, and we expect to, have a flawless start.
Bob, do you know what our current balance is with our fund balance?
I don't, but I can get that information for you for the audit meeting.
Okay. And could we have, when we do have meetings as part of your report, could we just have the current fund balance?
Sure. It's going to be very variable because it's going to be floating up and down with respect to where we're at in terms of grants being received and grants being paid. But yes, the answer is at any point in time, I'll give you what the number is.
Broken out by the preschool and
Well,
SAU.
in essence, I wasn't breaking it out. I'm talking about, I can do that, I guess, but we really are maintaining, I believe, just a single checking account in which monies, are recorded not through that account, but in our systems right here in the building.
Well, we can talk about it in our next meeting, because one of the things that the board was doing on a fairly regular basis was taking the preschool amount and returning that. That was pretty much a practice.
And that will continue.
Okay.
Right. We just have to close the books. Any other questions?
Anything else on the financials?
And I'm not going to talk about the grants because that goes over the name.
Go on to the student services report. Page 103.
So I'll start with my report where I analyzed the 17-18 IDA grant. I chose to analyze this one because it is coming to a close in September. So I could show you where your funds are to date, and this was the most accurate way to do it. what I wanted to highlight, not that it was a big thing, but I just wanted to make sure you understood it so that the very first part where it says IDA summary, the 27 cents, I only highlighted that because if you looked at our numbers when I put it together, it was going to be off. And I figured if you saw that I was off on 27 cents there and I couldn't add three big numbers together, how could I do all the calculations? So I wanted to make sure you understood that I was aware that it was off, and that was brought to the state. They were actually off by way more than 27 cents originally. And what had happened was when they took the consolidation, which the original consolidation was 27 cents less than what you have now. So the original consolidation on the numbers I had given you was $417,436.01. But when you added the three districts separate allocations together, it did not equal that amount. It was off by a couple $100. There was an error in the Stratford section where they didn't put the correct number in. They gave you the right amount. They just didn't give you the correct number in the listing, and that's what they told us. But in order to fix it and get it all correct, it wound up then increasing our allocation by 27 cents. Prior to them increasing our overall allocation by 27 cents, we were within 2 cents of spending every penny. Now we're 29 cents off. So to try to get that full 29 cents back, I know that in the newspaper you probably saw the Union Leader, $10 million was returned from IDA funds throughout the course of multiple years, not from us, but multiple districts. That wasn't always an accurate information that was given out, so what I wanted to do was just make sure you understood that we are trying to calculate for every penny given. It's very hard to get it down to the cent because of the indirect costs, because you have that 13% of indirect costs. So what I did, I broke up each section of your preschool grant, where we're at. Currently you can see that there's $5,300 remaining. That's not accurate as of right now because I've already started putting in some things. They haven't been spent, they haven't been approved, but I've been putting in things that the preschool needs at this point, now that we're getting closer and it has to be spent by September. By looking at that, in order to break out the calculations to make sure that everybody was receiving their fair shares, I put in the allocation as it's been allotted in our step-by-step allocations to each district, the cost of it. So I put that in and I broke it out. If you look at the activities list, you'll see where that those amounts come out to. Okay. So I had gone through and really broke some of those things out. So each one of these activities are currently in the IDA grant under the preschool, and they're telling you a brief description of what it covers. From there, I did the same thing for the large IDA grant. The problem is I couldn't just give you the percentages on some of them, so because they were a little more complicated. So I also broke them out with activities in a little bit bigger of a description in my summary. I'd be more than happy, because I know there's a lot of information there, to go over that. What I can tell you in analyzing the grant down to that 2 cent mark, or what was the 2 cent mark, and now it's about 29 cents. What it comes up being is if you look at your each district's individual allocation, Northwood will be receiving from the grant $166.69 more than what they were allocated, if you break it up that way with the numbers. Nottingham would be receiving $622.53 less than what was allocated to them. And then Stratford will be receiving an additional $456.13. Those numbers added together get you right up to where we're currently at with the full allocation. So this didn't used to be a factor because our grants continued to roll over and over, so you could always break it even. Now you're getting less time to try to break it even, and the grants come to a close, so you have to try to spend it. And that's where Mr. Rooning said earlier, right now, where we consolidate them, I have a much easier time on managing one grant, trying to throughout all the districts. Otherwise, it'd have one grant being actually 3, and then another one being 4. If you're looking at the preschool grant, you'd be really looking at trying to manage 12 different grants all at once, trying to budget each thing, and where we have large salaries in there, that'd be very hard to do. So doing it this way is able to really calculate down to the science, and then moving forward to the next year, if it doesn't balance itself out to the next grant, what we could do then is see what Northwood or what Nottingham or Stratford needs specifically to their school and just purchase something for them as that one-time purchase to offset the difference.
Okay, Nate, I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the numbers from last year, but you have Stratford down as being allocated 108,842.
That was the year before.
Okay.
No, that's correct.
I thought we
That's
had
right.
I thought, was it this last year that we had 143?
Remember, we have three grants open at once.
Okay,
So one closed, now you have two open. So
okay.
your 108 is your 17, 18.
Because we
And
have
your
143.
150 something, your 140 something is your 18, 19.
Okay, so we have
But I didn't
143
analyze that
plus
because it's still open and I still
Okay.
have quite a bit, you still have a lot of time to spend that.
Okay.
So that's not been analyzed. This is the one that's closed. This is the
Right.
one that you can truly analyze because things are closed.
Okay, and I do want to say that, I think Oyster River, which has several different towns in their district, do they consolidate their IDA grant? No, they do not. So I think that there are ways to do it. It's to make sure that it's, going forward, everybody's getting their equal amount that they're supposed to be. As far as our auditors said, our previous auditors, and I believe our new auditors, told us that it was unusual to see this kind of consolidation. That's what we were told by our auditors.
Well, you may have been told that by the auditors, but I can tell you that every district I've worked in as multi-districts has done a consolidated application, and your consolidated application started long before I arrived.
Right, I understand.
So-
It's not your fault.
So, what the bottom line here is, Nate can pull an adjustment out of next year's grant to even those numbers back to zero. So, but if you look at your total spends, I think you're off, how much?
That's what I would say. Stratford's actually in the positive by $456.13. So if they were separated, you got $456.13 more than what you would have if they were unconsolidated. So
That's for that 1 year.
that's for that year. Yes. Right.
Because right now, this year, our grant money is much larger, it's 143,000.
But when you start looking at when you look at it all, it would still play itself out because you still have those same percentages. But I understand what you're saying.
I don't want to, we've got a lot on our plate tonight, so I don't want to belabor it. There's one question I do have about it, and I just want to put it out there, and I think it's really for a future discussion. If you go in and you look at the average cost per pupil on the DOE website for each of the towns, you will notice that SAU 16, which is the Exeter, SAU 44, and then one or two others have asterisks next to them indicating that their federal funds are not included in their calculation of their...
Because they do a consolidated application.
Right, so there's only a few of us, maybe...
Like 5 or 6.
Yes,
Yep.
that's it.
Yep.
Out of the
So
entire
our cost per pupil, which is something that Nottingham talks about a lot during budget season, it's not including probably on average about 160,000 annually. So I just put that out there. Someone pointed it out to me after our deliberative session.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Can you restate that a different way? Because I'm not.
Sure. Out on the DOE website,
Yeah.
the Department of Education, they do. They have a lot of data points.
Right, I followed all that, but when we are stating that our cost per pupil
Does not include.
We have more revenue. The grant money isn't included in our revenue.
So we're spending more
Yes.
per student than what that number
And
is.
that's indicated, yes. Yes.
Well, that's
Yes.
reflected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the
We would have a
revenue,
higher
the additional
cost per
revenue
student.
is not being included.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Just want to make
And
sure.
but the majority, there are only a handful really
Okay.
that have that little asterisk. So that's just something to bear in mind that it's not included. So we have a higher cost per pupil if we were doing it the way the majority are doing it.
Well, the majority are, I don't know that the majority, there are quite
are
a few that are
including it.
single, right, but they're single district SAUs.
A bunch of them are,
Or
I'd say it's like 50-50. I have the list somewhere I can show you.
But regardless, they're including the revenue of their grants in their cost per pupil.
Right. So it just came up, someone asked me about it after our deliberative, and it's kind of, I think the budget committees will start to hear about it, and so just a point of reference there. Okay.
So, I mean, it looks like it's about approximately like a 1% change then,
Yeah.
ish. a little bit over 1%. Right, difference.
Well,
Right?
Probably
Because
wouldn't be
your entire
that
budget's
flat.
like, your entire budget's around 11 million, right?
yeah,
And so the amount of grants we're getting here is in the area
another
of
160 or so.
Right, so it's slightly over 1%.
So you would see a slightly different though.
Right.
So, okay. So is everyone good with this? That's a nice report, Mr. Patrick.
A question for next time, just like yours.
Uh-huh.
How much of this grant money goes to the SAU? Indirect costs.
For the indirect costs.
Mr. Burns mentioned that indirect costs throw off the numbers by.
Well, what happens is, so, I'm not sure what your rate is this, but let's say it's I know the last time I wrote it was 3.5%, right? So what happens is, let's say you write all your activities except for $50,000 worth, then you write an indirect cost activity for 3.5% of that total money without the 50,000, right? Then every time you add an activity, you need to back the indirect cost out and recalculate it. So when you're getting down to the end of the grant, right? Nate might have spent, everything except for $20, and then he goes and he calculates the indirect cost off the activity, and then, there might be $1 or $2 left over that you can't take.
So the SAU doesn't get any money out of the grant for the services of managing each individual part?
No, you get your indirect cost, which it calculates into your revenue.
I have nothing to add.
Did I cover it?
I think you covered. I mean, we do pay Fred Wolf $12,000 a year, but that's part of your overall
budget, yeah.
allocation in the budget.
Right, but if you look back at page 91 of your packet, if you look at line number 4, I don't need that number.
No, I'm going to tell them.
If you look at line number 4, see where it says indirect cost revenue?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that's where your indirect costs go. And then that, when we budget, comes off your total appropriation per town. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And for the indirect costs in this formula, it wouldn't be fair to bring it in the thirds because there's no way you would have the third there because you didn't get as much money. So what I did in order to come up with those calculations is what is your percentage of the overall allocation. So if you're looking at that, that's why that one number is different in the percentages than anywhere else because it's really the percent of your allocation to the full joint allocation is how I did that. And that's why each district has a smaller indirect cost because their indirect cost can only be 3.9% of what their overall allocation was. You can't give you more cost than what you receive.
And then, just since we're talking about indirect cost, if we did your indirect cost by district, there's wide variances. So one district may be 1.5%, another might be 2.2%. If you pull it into the SAU, you get the higher rate. So
So that you just so I can, you were trying to understand if there's any administrative fee that goes
Exactly.
for the
Administrative cost was administration of the grant that comes back to the SAU.
okay, for the services of.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Right. Because pretty much all of these, if you look at page 104, it's all pretty much SAU related services, if you will, that are
they're parsing out to
consolidated
the
here.
districts.
Yeah. Okay.
In the 16,245, that's all going out back to the grants. I mean, it's broken out to all kinds of different specific.
Yeah, it's all different.
Right.
Yeah, your indirect cost revenue that you're looking on the revenue sheet is not just IDEA.
No.
That's your indirect cost for your Title II, your Title I, your Title IV, your
All grants.
Yeah. We don't take indirect costs in the preschool because
They're not required.
it's so small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
An allocation.
So is everyone comfortable at this point? I'm sure this will be an ongoing conversation, but right now with this information, it's good info? Everyone good?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, I know that this changes yearly, but under the CBNA community-based instructor salary.
Yeah.
So the difference, that's based on actual students you have in that class?
Yeah, that's shown on the next page where it says activity number 6055-9. These percents calculated were based on each district covering 1/3 of half of the salary. So I took the salary,
No,
broke it in
you're
half.
talking about Jared now.
No, I'm not talking about Jared, I'm talking
That's
about,
a full salary.
I'm talking about.
Oh, that's right. Oh, slow down for Nate. He's right.
So I took the CBI salary, broke it in half,
Yeah.
and billed each district 1/3 based on that person does para with all 3 districts for half of her time. And then the other half of her salary is broken up into 4 students with one district and 1 student with another for this report purpose. So next year it would be different because there would be different students. So that's how that was calculated.
Okay, so I'm looking at this, then Stratford had 1 student,
That's
Nottingham had 0, and Northwood had 4.
In the CBI class, that's correct.
And of course that varies every year.
That's correct. That's why you'd have to relook at this each time. Because you'd have to do this each year based on the preschool allocations as well.
And you're saying the other half of her salary is totally equally divided, those other students get an equal amount of time?
When I spoke with the headmaster, yes. She works with all 3 districts equally.
Are we good for now with this?
The other part of my report that I included was the preschool salary comparison. And one of the things that was asked was salary and benefit comparison. I couldn't go in and give you their days off, their professional development monies. I mean, it was hard enough to get all this information because I had to contact each district. I had to look up their salary schedules. And one of the things that I would let you know is I started this process before voting took place in most towns. So I couldn't tell you if they had new contracts. I didn't go back and recalculate it, but just looking at the contract year that I did this in, and that's what's listed, because these were determined prior to, so it shows you what their salaries were as of their contract. So if they didn't get a new contract, that's their salary. If they got a new contract, chances are it would be slightly higher, but I based it just off of the information that was readily available. And when I say readily, that's not quite fair, but was available to me. I did call several of them to verify what they received for health and dental as well. At the time of this report, I did not have SAU 53s, but what I can tell you is that afterwards, it's not in this, but afterwards, I did receive the fact that they cover 100% single dental, and they cover 90% health for SAU 53, which is across the 3 districts. So other than that, I did put a note down in the bottom that tells you, each column what it is and where we're going, as well as up at the top what was approved by the board for next year.
And you noted that the 2 SAUs, how they determine.
I did. If there were districts that had multiple,
Yeah.
I noted how they determined that.
So one of them averages and one of them just picked one of them.
That's correct.
Thank you for all that work.
No, not a problem. It was fun. It was a lot of reading because you have to go to the state website and look up collective bargaining agreements and.
You define fun.
Well, the top one, I'll tell you, the top one was 53 because I had to pull up 5 different districts and then go across and average and bring them in, and that one was a little bit different. But
He's been spending too much time with me.
I got to speak with a few of my counterparts too to find out some information. Any questions on the benefits part though? Because I can try to explain it. Like I know I listed a couple fours.
What's ours up top?
Yeah, yours is up to that's correct.
And you base this off of similar preschool programs?
That any preschool program that we knew of that matched our component, which was a early childhood special ed preschool.
based on these numbers, it looks like we are certainly not overpaying our teachers. And just think we should come up with a way to make sure that we don't end up in the same position we have been. Maybe not tonight, but.
So I just have, I think you may have addressed this, you just averaged, because I know Timberland's a pretty big district, so they must have more than 2 preschool teachers. I would guess, I don't really know.
You mean, I didn't average their salaries, what I did was I looked at their scale. Like,
oh, okay.
Whatever our scale is, I matched it to the district scale. The only ones where I had to average was, so if you look at SAU 50, I didn't average. When I called, they said they use RISE. They use RISE, so they don't average. They just chose one of the districts and used that. SAU 53, across all 5 different districts, they average the salary across their scale. So they take whatever scale that teacher's hired at or in, and they average it across all 5 districts.
Okay.
So.
And so, for instance, someone like Timberland, they use the same scale for their preschool as they do, just one scale for everybody, basically?
That's correct. And certified teacher.
Certified teacher.
Yeah.
The members of unions, I would think.
Right, are all these union positions? Did you have any idea on that?
Yes, these cover under their CBAs.
So all the preschool teachers are all covered
under that's why I chose,
They're
yeah.
all within a union.
Well, yeah.
No, I would argue that probably the one where you average and the one where they pick are not part of those unions.
Yeah, most likely because there's
I
5.
think that's an important piece to
Right.
consider because that's the difference in our preschool teachers. They are not a collective bargaining.
Right, but I believe, and I want Nate to go back and check this, that when you look at SAU 50 and SAU 53, you'll see that they are not part of the union. We'll verify that.
Yeah, I can verify that for you.
Whereas the other ones in single districts might well be.
Correct.
Right, because your single districts make their pre-K program part of their districts,
Right.
where this SAU has a pre-K program that's actually considered a private, because it's run out of an SAU.
Any other questions or thoughts on this piece of information?
Can we follow up with this regarding the union?
Yeah, I can ask. I'll get those 2 information.
So, is there gonna be follow-up, like, as a recommendation for what we should do for policy?
Yeah, obviously this is a really full, we should probably get a lighter agenda and do a couple of action items on one of our agendas and just figure out what data people may need additionally and make some decisions.
I just have a question if a policy is the way to solve the problem. I too don't want to repeat whatever errors were made with people not getting the proper raises. I don't know that a board policy is necessary, and if so, I think that's going to take a lot of time to look at. The evaluation piece, there's all kinds of pieces.
I agree.
I've never seen a policy around salary.
I agree.
But didn't we say we would give them whatever related to the steps that they got at the school, or am I?
It was a suggestion.
That was.
Yeah, I never.
No, I'm not
So
saying
Nate,
that we
when you-
decided that, I'm saying that
Suggestion.
that was a suggestion, so that was where the policy came from, right? That we're
Well, I
talking
suggested
about?
making a policy, and I still believe that we should have a policy on this saying, laying out the way we should.
So maybe Nate, when you
Pay
get
our
those
teachers.
answers, if those other 2 SAUs are not under the CBA, if you could ask them how they, just so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, how they came up with, we just randomly chose rye, or we randomly chose it, like how do they codify that?
And
Or
it's
is that
also
just what
the
they're currently
demographics.
practicing?
How can we compare rye?
Yeah, that's not.
No, I was just asking.
Stratford and Nottingham
I
and
don't think
Northwood.
anyone's saying that.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the salary base.
No, I was just saying how they codified how they made that decision.
Right.
What?
So we
Well,
want
it
to
could be
set
no.
this for a
It could
I don't
future
think we want
agenda
to
for
base ourselves
discussion?
on rye.
I think that's
Okay.
a good idea.
All right, so we'll set it up for a future.
I need to clarify something here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, we can look at all sorts of districts across the state and we can disqualify based on this one has a different demographic or this one has a different size. What I asked Nate to do was look at multi-district SAUs, because that's the kind of setup that you have too. So it's not like we went and cherry-picked the most wealthy, I think you can see that we didn't. But you're always gonna have difference in those demographics. You know, if you wanna look at someone who has exactly the same free and reduced lunch rate as you do, or the average, you know, we can do that, but what I asked him to do was look at the multi-district SAUs, and I thought that was the most appropriate for this task.
So can you clarify for me, maybe I'm not understanding what you mean by.
Except for Barrington, right, if we're just
And Newmarket?
about the same size. Actually, we
Okay,
went for
so
size.
there's a difference in multi-district and
Yep,
size,
you're right.
I just wanna clarify.
Yep, there is.
The other thing that I think should be considered is that, you know, you gotta be competitive out there or you don't get high quality hires, right? So if you're not competitive, and people aren't gonna go into a town and say, well, I'm gonna take less money from this because there's a less of a tax base. They don't think like that, you know, it's market forces at some point, right?
And the market it is very important.
Right.
However, unfortunately, the market for preschool teachers is different from elementary ed and high school teachers.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
different.
But we're just looking at the
market.
preschool
Yes.
teachers
For
here,
licensed
right?
teachers, not
So,
for EEC.
if we were to take this to a next meeting, and what we'll try to do is moderate it so that we hear one point of view, and then perhaps a different point of view, and try to manage it that way so everyone gets a say or a sense of it.
I mean, I think the first thing we'd have to figure out is what do we want
What do
to
you want for data?
Like, do we want, not even for data, but like, where do we want this to end up? Do we want to end up with a policy that says how we're going to pay our teachers? Do we not want to do that and do something else? What's that something else then?
But is that the discussion we're having next time?
Well, I think you need to have that discussion before you have the discussion, right? Like, well, where do we want to end up on this?
Do you want to
Right.
create, what are some options then? So you're saying policy, so
Please.
there'd be a narrative there, would you, or what, another option would be to have a
Scale.
pay scale similar to what you'd see in a
Sure.
in a
But it should
contract.
be based on evaluations and, you know, not just that you automatically give a certain percentage. We've already given very large increases, if you want to call it market adjustments, whatever you want to call it. We've given them over the last 2 or 3 years significant increases to their salary. So I think it should be based on evaluations. And then, you know, whether a cost of living, we look at, you know, whether it's we're giving other people at the SAU 2% or 3%, we look at that each year, what the budget can handle. So it's not just across the
But
board.
I
They're
don't know
not
that
in
it's
the
fair
CBA.
to
I don't
say
think that
what the
we're-
budget can handle if it were a new hire.
Right.
I mean, it would be good to have a policy, what, at our next new hire, how are we going to look
Right,
at that?
exactly.
Or not, maybe
Like-
not a policy, I don't mean to prejudge that, but some structure to figure out
Right.
how do we fit in the
I think
next
that-
person.
I'm
The
not
pay scale
opposed to
should
a
be-
structure, but I am opposed to a policy. I think that, I've never seen a policy around a salary.
Well, I don't think that the policy would dictate what the salary would be or how much an increase would be. The policy would dictate how we go about determining
Right.
what. So it could be that you look at X,
Right,
Y, and
sure.
Z, and then you determine.
Including
But I
evaluations
I
or whatever.
personally don't want in 5 years or 10 years from now to end up having to do the same thing and have these big, you know, spikes. So I would just like to see it, however we determine we're going to go forward, that it just goes forward at a fair and incremental rate instead of, you know, falling behind again. So, like I said, I don't think the policy has to be.
Right. And that is what I meant by policy.
Yeah,
I was saying
I
that
think
too.
we're
I mean,
saying
it was,
I was probably too rigid, thinking that it was a policy stating, like, I just have never
It could
seen
be
a
look at
policy
this
around
annually and, you know, determine it based on these factors. But it just,
Those are the
it
four
just
things you're
needs-
gonna look at.
Right,
Sure.
but I don't personally wanna have we've had the same debate for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been here, and
So
Yeah.
just figure out
Tiresome
a way to describe what it is that you're going to do.
Yeah.
And memorialize that somehow and try to take into consideration all these moving parts.
yeah, and I
But
mean,
we
we
don't
should
have
set
a
it up for the
policy
future
committee,
too.
so who would be
Well, I
tasked
think
with
you
this?
would bring it right here.
You would bring it back to the table and you'd sort of outline what you wanted, and then we'd take it back and write it and bring it back to you.
Okay.
If it's gonna be some sort of pay scale, then you have to figure out how that would look and how, what seems reasonable. But I personally have a concern, I shouldn't say a concern when you look at the CBAs and the local districts, if we're outpacing those. I think that's problematic for some of the districts to try to explain
that's what I
Absolutely.
said, that's the
Right.
complicated piece of it.
That's
I
the
think.
complicated
Well, and I
piece.
think Mr. Byrne made a simple recommendation. If we just go for the lowest
That could be the
Exactly.
policy.
step,
The lowest.
That could be a policy.
I mean, you know what I mean, the lowest placement.
Yep.
Same placement.
At least
lowest
they're
money.
gonna grow at the same rate as,
What I'm worried about is that the reason, if I look,
If it's a contract, it's not a contract.
right, yeah.
right, if I look at the history, way back in the mid-2000s, there was like 3 or 4 years where it was 0, 0, 0, and that's what threw you behind.
I think it was a couple, right, when the economy fell apart around '08.
Yeah.
I think that we went like 4 years where the superintendent didn't get an increase,
Yep.
3 or 4, but I think the preschool was like 2, maybe 3. I'm trying to visualize that report, it's in there somewhere, but.
Yeah. Yeah, we
And it
gave-
was really because even people in the local communities weren't
Mhm.
seeing increases, and we had to be sensitive
Right.
to.
Right, I'm just saying, that's how we got so far behind, if you look at that over time.
So we'll get it later.
So for a future
Yes, please.
meeting with the idea being there'll be some sort of outcome as to the strategy that we pursue. Okay.
Put it on a parking lot. Somewhere we'll put it on a parking lot, do a parking lot.
Although these timelines, yes.
You got a timeline,
Spare timeline, no parking lot yet.
Kate, thanks for all that work.
No
Yes, thank you. All right.
Ideally, we'll have a decision made before we have to start talking about it on this season next year.
Right.
That would be a good goal.
That would be a good goal for the year.
Save us a
I
little
wrote
bit
it
of
down.
time, everybody.
Okay.
I'm gonna put it on,
May or something.
well, it's the next meeting.
All righty. Okay, so moving on from that, we're into the superintendent report.
You have 2 personnel reports, you have one that starts on 106, and I'll start with that. If you want to take your pens out, if you look at Jennifer Cronshaw and the paradramatic play, the source for that is actually IDEA, not the local operating budget.
Both of them?
Nope, just the first one.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Byrne, can you explain what that is?
So, dramatic play is what they're trying to move forward in the preschools, and they really, IDA is really trying to support it. It's not something we budgeted for. What it means to do is to have our paraprofessionals come in at another time, or somebody come in at another time when the kids are not in the building, and they set up an activity center that rotates so that kids can pretend to be an astronaut, pretend to be a chef, but the dramatic play is set up so that it's really interactive and there's a way for them to play skills that they don't typically have on a regular basis. In order to do that, the kids can't be in there, when the person's trying to set up this play structure, because they're not going to let them. So they need to be out of the kids need to be out of the room so that they can get this activity set up and some modeling and stuff, so that, and it's above and beyond what we've contracted them for. So I worked with Mrs. LaValle to figure out just how much time would be needed and how often to set these up, and that's where we got that.
I have a question. Okay, I taught first grade for years. I had activity centers, I had dramatic play centers. As a teacher, I stayed after school and I set up my centers. That was part of my job, was to set up my classroom for activities for my kids. I mean, I would spend hours after school doing that. And so I'm confused as to why the teachers aren't setting up their own centers. I mean, we just give them tremendous raises. It's their classroom. I don't understand that. I mean, it's not that she's coming in and doing extra things with the kids. It's setting up the centers, the play centers, the activity centers. It's part of your prep that you do if you have a classroom with young children.
So as a household, it depends on income from a teacher.
Yeah.
And also depends on family time.
Yeah.
I'm quite offended by the fact that people should ask my family to come in and do extra work for free. Yeah, because you know what? Their hearts are so big that they will do it. And it's basically asking them to volunteer.
I have to disagree.
I agree with him.
If you're a teacher and you have a classroom, I did this. Most teachers stay in.
Well, I don't think
We have another.
doing it for free.
Okay, so we've heard kind of both sides of this
Sorry.
at this point.
Wow.
You're saying you want a paraprofessional, and it says, at $13.92 per hour for 2 hours
5 weeks, what is that?
for 5 months.
5 months, sorry.
It's supposed to be 2 hours a month for 5 months.
2 hours a month.
For 5 months. So a total of 10 hours over the next 5 months.
So half an hour a week, essentially.
Instead of a half an hour a week, what it's going to be is it's really 1 hour every 2 weeks.
So like go in on the Friday when the kids aren't there?
Correct.
So
It's something, right.
And the teachers are there doing their planning on Friday?
That's correct.
But they do need help on Friday to get it done?
Well, because they're not just doing their planning. That's when they do all their testing. That's when they write their IEPs. It's not planning. That's because they don't get prep time any other time throughout the day.
Yep.
They eat their lunch with the kids because of the transition.
Right. So as everyone understands, this is for a para to go in for 2 hours a month, typically on Fridays for a period of 5 months to set up prep for this dramatic play.
And no design features of that?
I'm sorry.
Like figuring out,
That's
like,
it.
is it just setting up, or is she doing some preparation on researching centers, or?
She works with the teachers and they do research to figure out what is the next thing that they should do.
And this person's already a para working there full time.
Do you wanna,
Well,
talk
part-time.
about the other one
Part-time.
on that same,
Yeah, these are your
Form,
ESY. I haven't nominated anybody yet, so but let me get through the list. That's your ESY para for extended school year services, and that's the rate that we pay, and those are the hours. And then your third is sort of a guest teacher for ESY. It won't be one of your school year staff. So, any questions about that?
And that is out of the budget.
Yeah, it's all budget. So, yeah.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? How many preschool teachers work in the summer?
One.
And it's neither of the two that work during the school
That's
year?
correct.
This is a different teacher for
Right.
ESY?
It's always been that way. Different teacher this year, though.
Yeah, it's a different teacher. We unfortunately we lost the teacher that had been doing it for a long time. Has decided not to do it this summer.
Okay.
Take the summer off,
Sure.
which was nice for them, sad for us.
Sure.
So I'll nominate Jennifer Cronshaw for the para for dramatic play prep, $13.92 an hour for a total of 10 hours out of IDEA. Jennifer Cronshaw as the ESY pre-K para for $16.50 an hour, 3 hours a day, 3 days a week for 4 weeks. And Emily Solomonidis, hopefully she's not watching, ESY pre-K teacher for $30 an hour, 12 hours a week for 4 weeks.
I'll make a motion we accept the nominations on the report dated April 8th, 2019 as presented.
Second.
Actually, I would say as amended.
Great.
Thank you.
Still
You
second.
do them separately?
Good.
Maybe we should do it separately.
I'll withdraw my nominations.
Well, your
So
nominations can still stand.
Well, if you want to do it, you just want to approve them separately?
Correct. You can elect them separately. Just Gabriel wants to take back her.
Okay, I will make my motion to accept the nomination of Jennifer Cronshaw on the report dated April 8th, 2019 as amended.
For which position, please?
Oh my god, the first one.
So for the, out of the IDEA. Okay, so you've got your motion and your second. Any discussion, additional discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Did you, she's got
Okay. Opposed?
8-4.
Okay. That motion carries.
I'll make a motion to accept the nomination for Jennifer Crenshaw out of the local operating budget, the second nomination.
Second.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? All right, anybody opposed? Anyone abstaining? So that motion carries 12. And then the final.
Motion to accept the nomination of Emily Salaminides.
Second, yeah, I like that second.
You did a better job than me.
Maybe.
You must have a degree in linguistics.
I actually have no idea if I did a better job, to be honest with you.
We'll ask her.
It sounded
Smooth.
You're confident in delivery.
Okay, so we
Did
got
anyone
that,
second
we got that motion
Yes.
Okay.
and a second?
Consistency.
Okay. All right then, all those in favor? Okay. No abstentions? No opposed, so that one carries 12.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Brenda Godwin with regret.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, motion carries 12 in favor.
Next, I passed out a separate personnel report. I'll nominate Mary Bulger as the receptionist at $14 an hour out of the local operating budget.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we've got the motion and the second on that. My quick question on it is the cost of position is 14. Is that what we were paying?
That's budgeted. You were paying $13.50 before. You're budgeted at $14.25.
Okay.
I was,
I didn't know, does that mean that if the person returned, they would have been at 14 and, or whatever, and that's why we budgeted, but this is a new hire, so do they just inherit that hourly rate?
Wait, sorry again, because Nate was talking to
I'm
me
sorry.
first.
I was just trying to understand, following up on Sue's question. Sue asked if $14 an hour is what the last person was making, and I thought
The
you were
last
fine by
person,
saying
the
it's
last
what's in
person, if you
budget.
go back to your board packet and look at your attempt to hire for the last time I nominated at $13.50 with an increase going to 14 after a review, okay? And that person resigned.
Correct.
In interviewing this candidate, and knowing this candidate for a number of years, the $14 an hour is an appropriate starting rate.
This position is like defense against the dark arts. You can't, this is our third or fourth one this year, right?
Third.
At least third.
Well, some of them get promoted.
Okay, and this is
In
full
Yes.
time?
No. It's 5 hours a day.
5 hours. Okay, right. And this is where you share, one of the bookkeepers is sharing that too, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, we made the bookkeeper full-time,
Yep,
right?
yep, to share this position.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember my history. Okay, so, we've got the nomination, and it's at $14 per hour. And it is part-time, 5 hours a day, and as we discussed at the prior meetings, we have, one of the bookkeepers filling in every day for part of those, so that it's not a full-time position.
It's 11 to 4,
Okay.
which is the busy time.
Okay.
Well, from 1 to 4 is the busy time.
Alright. Alright, so any additional discussion on this one? Hearing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed or abstaining? So that one carries 11 in favor.
No, we are down one member from when we started. So.
Yes, we had 12,
that's
but
right.
Rosalind left, so it's 11.
Shout
Yep.
out, so I didn't see that.
So 6-5 on that first one, and then 11-0, 11-0, 11-0.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. All right.
Did you want to do nominations in non-public or public?
So, I'll leave that to the board. We have a list of nominations. If there's going to be discussion around it, then we would move into non-public to do those and then come back out and vote publicly. Or you can take the nominations in public. It's up to the board. You have the list of nominations ready?
I haven't updated, let's see what I'll just wait
Okay.
and see what.
I would prefer to go non-public.
All right, so we'll do that at the end. Okay.
Do you just want to continue?
Yep.
The general assurances are in your packet for information only. They're also going to be in your local packets. As people are probably aware, last year there was a requirement that the superintendent and the board chair from each sign the general assurances. I really like to sign things unless I'm sure that we're complying. And I found a section of the general assurances that I have questions about. And we are working hard, which is going to affect your local districts, at implementing policy DFA, which is a 23-page grant policy. And then it's connected to your fiscal policies, so there's going to have to be modifications to your fiscal policies too. It'll have to come back to your local
And the addition of a number of.
and in addition of a number of procedures. We've got those things well underway, but I'm not anticipating that we'll be ready to sign your grant assurances until June. So, just to let you know.
Yes, can you let me go too? I told Michael I had
No.
master.
Anybody have any questions about that?
So basically, the board should just acquaint themselves with the assurances, because that board chairs, again, need
The
to
big section in these
understand.
assurances, hold on, is, I will show you exactly what I'm concerned about.
But I'm just saying, the boards need to be aware.
Yes, you should read these and you should have a consultation. But if you look at page 119 of your packet, if you look at written policies and procedures, it'll be there.
Yep, top of the page.
I want to make sure that all those things are in place before we start signing off on things. And generally, a lot of them are, but there's some that aren't and haven't been for, like, they're not existent. So that's what we're working on right now.
Okay.
I know it's a long meeting, and I'm not going to take a lot of your time, because you can do this on your own, but there was board members that haven't seen the new data set from the DOE. I wasn't going to pull Northwood, Nottingham, or Stratford. I thought we'd like look at Barrington tonight. You guys can look at this on your own. If you go to the DOE website, when you go to the DOE website, if you look up on the left, you'll see a list. It used to say data and reports. Now it says iPlatform. That's how you access this. If we just take a quick look, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, it will give you your, determination for federal accountability. This is the middle school. It's going to give you your percentage of enrollment, male, female, and by race and ethnicity. It will give you your economically disadvantaged rate, your students with disability rate. Then it gives you that they're full-day kindergarten, 21st century schools. And then if you hit overview, you can look at student achievement, and I'm not going to take a lot of time. It will give you academically proficiency by subject and over time.
Is this from the SAS guide?
Yeah, yes, yep. It'll give you your assessment for proficiency levels, your ELL. Also,
this is accessible from the DOE website?
yeah, this is all accessible for you, and you just go in and type your district, and you can see the data.
When did this roll
About a month and a half ago. If you go back to overview, you can look at academic growth targets. I don't know if these are in yet. They're still building right now. Yep, they've got their growth targets in there and what they should be. Not sure what environment is.
You can even do regression analysis with different
Yeah, I'm gonna go,
pieces.
yeah,
and-
yeah.
Pretty exciting.
It goes over discipline data, what's been, safety and disciplinary incidences. It goes over your percentage of expulsions. And your average class size will be in there, but it's not now. Then you can look at your class is taught by an experienced educator, and then your class is taught by a teacher certified in the given subject. Actually, there's another section where you can look at what these effects are, and believe it or not, this has more of an effect than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. So educator experience, an experienced educator has a higher impact on student learning by correlation than being certified in the subject that you're teaching. I'm not going to say that across the board, but you can see it when you go to...
Experience
You can
literally
do
being
some-
longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do the
Yeah.
regression pieces to see what the correlations
Yeah.
are.
Shocking.
Then
Once you keep doing something.
you can look... Will we stop talking? You can look at your federal accountability determination and things like that. Then there's another section, and this is really good. This is pretty intuitive, so it's okay to poke around. You'll figure out what you're doing, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but let me get it if I can. I think I can do it from here, right? Can I get into... No.
The I Explore and the...
I Explore
yeah,
and I have to do that from the... Hold on.
to go out, yeah. I wish you could, just have like
Yeah.
another quick option to go up to it.
Then we can go to from I Report, which is where you were. You were just in I Report. Now we can go to I Explore. And this, you can actually do statistical comparisons of like two conditions. So we'll get you one. Sue can talk a little bit. She's
No,
done
I was just gonna say, Christine, you see it's Tableau?
Yes.
So you can...
Make a free graphs.
Right. So you can go in and look at the Tableau information and click on it. It's a little confusing. I'm not going to go too far into it. But then you can compare District A to District B. You can pick two districts and do a comparison. And then Discover isn't really, I don't know how active Discover is. They're still working on that. Yeah, equalize
Yeah, but see,
value.
this is where you can do the regression analysis and
Yeah.
stuff.
Right. So it's coming along. Like today I had to do a new report called the A12G, which had to do with your administrative salaries. They already had those, but now they've sort of codified it into another report that we have to do. So I submitted that information today. So I think by next school year you'll see all these pieces in place from the DOE. And it makes it really easy, like specifically with student achievement, is either a green, a yellow, or a red, right? That's pretty easy to figure out. So it's not going to be incredibly confusing to the public. And I have to say, I like looking at the system when I need data because it's all right there. It's much, it's progressed a lot since when we just used to pull the school district report cards and take a look at them by individual districts. So feel free to explore those things.
It looks really neat. Thanks for
Yeah,
showing us that.
it is. I mean, they still have some of the static
Yeah, you
data
can
in
still
the
get
other
the static,
reports, yeah, but
they're trying to
this is
convert
pretty-
it all over.
move it all over, yeah. But it is a little more fun looking at it this way.
It's definitely easier, I'll tell you.
We really wanted to show off our television.
It's not a television, it's a monitor.
so
But
All right, I'm telling the story, because you people. No, our LCD projector was 20 years old and broken, and we couldn't project anything for Tyler for the trainings. And then my other option was that, and that wasn't going to work. So we smart shoppered, and plus the other thing is we had the old BA's laptop, which was broken. So I smart shopped it out of computer replacement equipment, which we had a budget for, and we bought a laptop and that for the total sum of about $700. So that will just allow us to present. And what I didn't do is I didn't get up and move it over so it's centered and pull it out, but you can do that too. So, we're hoping we can address that Tyler piece and any other PD pieces when I need to do presentations for that. So, and we have not watched anything. No, watch it.
He did it out in centers as you want to, yeah.
Good.
It's gonna demonstrate.
Yeah.
Don't pull it off the wall.
Oh, what? Oh, it actually does move. How
So-
nice.
It will, if I went back and messed with it, I could do it.
Can you move it a little more to the right?
Well, the problem is, Mrs. Henriksen, there's a little challenge to centering, if you noticed, is that there's a hole there. So, and I didn't want to cover the
Who
whiteboard.
put that up?
Mr. Stanley put it up.
Our technology.
Our tech guy put it up for us.
Obviously not a
Well, you just can't you can't center it.
Because there's a, yeah.
You can't center it because there's a closet right
You
there.
have a measuring tape.
Oh yes, we put a lot of brain power into figuring it out.
Oh, it was a whole committee, different committees meeting at 3 different times with feedback on where it was going to go. So we're not taking any more. After that, on page 131, you have a Somersworth School District request.
Oh, wow, that's a familiar name.
So this is for Somersworth and Rollinsford, correct?
Correct, either or.
And they're just
Oh,
kind of putting out,
They're both working?
Yeah. Whichever one can get out first.
yeah, there's only two there. So they're
I thought one was leaving.
two very different
Demographics.
demographics on these
If we can't have both, right?
items. Somersworth is a city, they have a city council and they're a dependent school district, so everything needs to go through their city council. That adds quite another layer of bureaucracy and complexity to take on in an SAU. I don't know, for those of you that work at schools, do you feel that?
It makes no sense. They're too far away.
Yeah.
To even if there's an emergency at the building, I mean, how, you gotta wait like 40 minutes to get there for the superintendent to get there.
I think it would be a lot
Think
of,
about the mileage check.
Yeah.
oh,
But the contracts are, I guess I'm not totally clear on what they're asking, but it doesn't interest me really at all.
Well,
I-
what
I
they're
don't-
asking
I don't
is,
think it's a good idea. I don't
basically
think
what's
they could ask for
happening is
anything
they're
I'd wanna
both
give them.
studying with draw, and there is no SAU 56 rate if it passes. So they're looking for somebody to pick up their superintendent services if we're interested.
Is SAU 56 just those two, or is there?
Mhm.
This is two.
I believe they're asking, not just us, many towns.
right.
Oh yeah, this is
Yes.
not, this is,
Yes.
this is not,
Basically, it's
yeah.
whoever.
This is not an engraved invitation.
Half of the Rollinsford kids go to Maine.
Marshwood anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So Marshwood
And they're trying to
has,
get rid of, they're trying to get rid of the,
Rollinsford just
But
has
school
K
business
to
total.
5,
K to 5 or K to 6.
and then the rest of it, middle school and high school is in Maine.
Correct. They go to Marshwood.
I don't think they could, because I think next year the fifth is going over there as well.
It may be. There's a phase.
That's what
in,
I've heard.
So I'm not totally
So
sure.
there'll be K to 4 in Rollinsford.
It started
That's my
with
understanding.
12, 11, 10, 9,
Yeah.
and then 8, 7, and it may.
In the current superintendent, where will he be staying with Somersworth, or where will he go?
It's
You never, I guess you
I don't know.
I think we're way ahead of
This
the
is
horse right
Henderson.
now.
Yeah. So is
I'm
this,
sure he's wondering
Do we
the
need
same
to vote
thing.
on this?
so the idea, I guess, would be there would be some questions and some financial data, I suppose, circulating to deter, are we interested in entertaining that? I think Somersworth would be quite unwieldy for us.
Oh my goodness. I think Rollinsford would as well, given its strange structure and its distance.
Yeah, it's so far away. And Somersworth is just.
Do you
I
have
need
thoughts?
more,
what do you
more
think, Mr.
information to vote.
Superintendent?
What do I think?
Yes, yes, I said, you have thoughts.
I sort of like the way the board's thinking right now.
You're not feeling like you have a lot of spare time that you were just
No,
hoping to
Mr. Byrne
fill?
did point out to me that Rollinsford is right next to where I live, so I can actually do that on the way to work. And I said,
You'll have them all anyway
Or we
eventually.
can make your home your office address. So you can,
no. So, here are the things that concern. I don't like the geographical break, right? We're not even touching one of the towns. Like, there's no border. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's, you figure, 17 miles for me to get to Somersworth from here. 17.4. That's a lot of time. It's nice here. I can run up to I can hit all 3 schools in one day here, right? And Co-Brown. I can do them all in one day. And there's some benefit to that for emergencies, for collaboration, for supervision. And I just think it'd be really hard to have a district that was 17, and Rollinsford is even farther, right?
Well,
So-
we wish them well. We wish them well. We hope they find.
I can send them a letter.
The thing is, you could
Find
do
it forever
things, so
home.
you could have an assistant
Forever home.
superintendent, like,
Go on
stationed
to the
there.
next.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, like,
You could, if you had office space, you could have an assistant superintendent who is stationed there.
I mean, I wouldn't suggest that we dismiss this just based on geography and not because we haven't figured out the logistics of it, when it could, who knows, save us a lot of money by joining with other school districts, and really we should be serving our taxpayers and not just what's convenient, right? I mean, if we were to do something like that, yeah, we would probably need more staff, and the cost would be spread out amongst more towns. And there are solutions for things like this. We could have a separate secondary office and an assistant superintendent or something like that there, perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas. But just to throw it out based on, like,
I think it would be a
without looking at any of
political
them.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
It would.
But, if we're saving a lot of money for our taxpayers, maybe it's not.
That
Right?
would be
I
a
mean-
hard thing to believe that we'd be saving money with Summersworth. It's
Without looking into it,
yeah.
I mean, I just wouldn't dismiss it offhand, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, you would
You know?
you'd be taking on a high school, which
Yep,
is a
you'd
whole,
be- yep.
another level of curriculum.
Is it even an approved high school if they lost their accreditation? I'm not sure of that.
I mean, it's an approved high school. I don't know if
I mean, they lost their accreditation.
I don't know if they lost their NEASC
I don't know if they've
accreditation. I don't
got
know.
I mean, I was thinking more along the terms of Rollinsford, who has just an elementary school. That kind of fits in with us, like,
No.
in a way. Well, having just elementary
Well,
school
but then
is
you're
what we all
crossing
do.
state lines, you're taking on the liability of
No, you
crossing
aren't.
state
It's
lines
phasing out
for
their school.
The only services that Rollinsford gives to Marshwood are LEA services. Rollinsford gives to Marshwood, yes. Their LEAs are required.
Right.
I guess, I'm just saying, I don't think we should dismiss it offhand just based on
No.
immediately what we think. I think it's something that we should actually get some data about before making a decision.
Well, what kind of data would you like?
I don't know.
Well, let's,
Or should we vote
so we've
if
got,
we-
we've got a thought that it could be cost effective for us, we don't know what the
Why
financial
don't we
piece
vote?
of it
don't
is.
Let's vote and see what's happening. I make a motion not to accept the letter from Summersworth and Rollinsford and wish them well.
I can still get discussions with that.
Wait a minute, okay, what,
Nothing, go on. Sorry, I just had a hard week and I'm getting ticked off, but go ahead.
what I'm wondering is, make the motion and then people can have the discussion. Let's do it.
That's the right way to do it.
Thank
Okay.
That's when our meetings,
Who sent it?
Who says
I
that?
did.
Need to be
Bruce.
Thank you.
You made a motion not to accept,
Exactly.
and that's what's been seconded. Okay. You've heard Mr. McGuigan's point of view. Do we want to just quickly, we've got a busy night and it's getting late. Any other
Or
discussions?
vote.
Yep. Let's vote.
Do you have any other
I have a
thoughts?
question. I have a question.
Bruce, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about it, your thoughts.
I believe what was said, it's too far away. It's a city. We're 3 towns. It has no correlation, and I don't think will be any benefit financially to us and our taxpayers. I think it would just be the opposite. I would think that it would.
What makes you think that? I'm just curious. I don't know, so I really don't.
They already pay outrageous taxes.
Yeah. Wicked. Have you been to Summersworth?
How does that make it? I don't know what that has to do with.
They have a lot of needs in Summersworth. A lot
They
of
have
needs.
multiple schools that would be taking on the high school, the middle school, the elementary schools, plus Rollinsford,
Well, I think this was isn't
plus the increase.
Were
of-
they specific
of
about
burden
what they
on
mean by
office.
obtain central office services?
Yeah.
I thought Summersworth and Rollinsford were separating from each other.
They are.
They're trying.
Right. So that's what. So this was that's Summersworth.
I don't know what
or
they're asking
Rollinsford.
other districts, this
Yeah,
is
right.
not what was asked.
Right. That's what I was thinking. That like Rollinsford. Not that I know anything about it, but it seems like it's a closer fit, and I don't know if it's worth dismissing on hand.
I don't know that they're asking to join 44. I believe they are asking to contract services.
Yes.
Which
We
is
will send
similar-
you a check and you contract, so
Which
they
is
will
sim-
keep 56 as their own SAU, is my understanding. and then contract services. They're not asking to join another SAU, I don't believe.
Yeah, it says conversations about allowing Somersworth or Rollinsford to
Right, and
obtain
then whichever
central
one-
office services.
Right, and I think whichever one stays, I don't know, I just,
No, they're both districts are trying to withdraw. I mean, they're in that early
I
stage.
understand that, but they are not asking to join,
I
they are
believe that,
asking to contract services.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that they would be part of the SAU.
Yes, I
Right.
believe that's what they're.
Christine, you haven't had your chance yet.
I was just gonna say that all they're asking for is future conversations, and it sounds like everyone at the table has questions about what it is they need and what it would look like, and so to say, no, we don't even wanna talk to you, I just have to say I
Right,
agree with you.
right.
I mean, I honestly, my gut is like, it's probably not a good idea.
Oh, I totally agree. I
But at the
totally
same
agree.
time, we don't even really know what
Right.
they're asking, so to just be
Right.
like, no,
Right.
I
That's my
would say, why don't you give us more information about what you're looking for, and then we can have a better understanding. I don't know. That's my thought.
They're looking for options. That's all they, that's early point, early.
And Mr. Rooney, you think it would be a stretch based on what you see?
Certainly can ask them exactly what they're looking for.
I mean, if they're gonna put together a plan, I mean, we could see what that plan looks like as well.
I don't think
Well,
we should spend a
would-
whole lot
no,
of
we
time
shouldn't
on
spend
it,
time
or
on
go
it.
out
No,
of our,
absolutely not.
way or anything, but just to say,
But if they want
like,
to.
right.
All right, so we've got the motion and the second out there at this point to decline. And so I think why don't we take a vote on that and then see where that leads us. So all those in favor of declining, this
Request.
request, yes. Okay, and those in favor of not declining this? Okay, so the motion to decline carries.
What was the count?
7-3.
17.
Yeah, we have 10 left.
Amy left.
Amy left, so we're down to 10.
How do we keep missing this? This is just, okay.
She just literally went out the door like 2 minutes ago.
And the next thing is the,
9.
What's wrong?
Sue, are you counting Sue?
I was not.
Okay.
I was,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right, next up.
is your calendar for the preschool.
So you need a vote to approve this? Okay. Are there any highlights or anybody should be aware of any major changes or?
I'll make a motion, is that okay? To accept the step-by-step preschool school calendar for the 2019-2020 school year.
Second.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of approval of the step-by-step? All right, looks like we've got 10, no one's abstaining, no one's opposed, so that motion carries with 10. At this point, I think it's starting to get pretty late, we still have the nominations to do in non-public. I would recommend that we reaffirm this DFA policy that we need for investment purposes. And then maybe,
Both the policies, right?
yep, one's a second reading and one is a reaffirmation. Do those, and then maybe move to non-public to handle the nominations and consider looking at the rest of the agenda and deciding what we need to take up and what we can move forward to the next meeting. Because this was a very, very full agenda.
Yeah, I'd like to remind everyone that we're still here because we skipped March. Just as a note for when we want to skip meetings in the future.
Okay, so if everyone's okay with that, we'll move to these policies and move through those and then go into non-public for the nominations. Does everyone, that work? Okay. All right, so we've got an investment policy DFA, which is a simple reaffirmation that the auditors mentioned that we need to maintain.
So we're looking to reaffirm, need a motion to
This is a reaffirmation,
I'll
yes.
make a motion to reaffirm policy
Second.
as written.
All right, any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of reaffirming? All right, we've got 9 now, okay.
We'll have 10 in a second.
She's running back down.
All right, so that motion carries with 9 in favor. We still have a quorum. When we hit below 8, we have a problem. Yes?
Point of order, if members leave like I will in a few minutes, it does not reduce your quorum by state law. Your state law is, once the members come to the meeting, they are part of the meeting whether they stay or not.
Okay,
And
so
they
you're
are
saying,
not-
once
they-
it's established, you can't lose it?
You can't lose your quorum.
Okay.
I'd be interested in seeing that law, but.
You can look at that. It's
You know what it is? You know where it is?
I don't know the number.
No, I know, but like whereabouts, like.
It's the other.
What's that?
It's the
Research.
All right, moving on.
That'll be good for my own meetings, so doing that.
Yeah.
Once you establish a quorum, a person cannot leave to stop a vote.
No, I meant.
Oh, right, that makes sense. Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's, okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to policy EHAB, we took it up at our last meeting, it's data governance and security. There were a couple of quick changes that needed to be made to it with terminology and roles, and I believe those have been corrected. So this would be moving this to final policy.
So what do you mean, are you adopting it then?
Yes, it's this is a second reading, right?
So it's the second reading, so it would be moving to
Yeah.
adopt. So I'll move to adopt policy EHAB, data governance and security, as written in the packet.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion on that? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of adopting policy EHAB? All right, we've got 10 in favor, no one opposed, no one abstaining, that motion carries.
We just put that out, yeah.
What do you got?
We should put Dave Root on.
Oh, boy. Sorry.
Probably hasn't really started.
Yeah.
Well, the first reading happened
Yeah,
before
first
the
reading,
election.
yes, we'll make sure. So with that,
Yeah.
All right, so I do believe the nominations are important, so we should move to non-public. Does the board concur? And we'll-
is there any other business that we're going to do other than that?
Right, so we have a bunch of new business here.
We have a board member that may be leaving, and I want to make sure there's no votes other than the nominations. Are we going to table the governance discussion?
Well, the new business is the self-assessment. It's way too late to try to get into that
Okay.
tonight.
Absolutely.
Future meeting dates we're gonna meet in May probably.
May 13th.
Yeah, the governance proposal, I would recommend we move to May. I don't know what the internet video discussion is. Can that move?
I don't know, either.
It's a nothing.
It's a nothing, nothing burger.
I think it had to do with Northland. I don't know why I ended up in here. Maybe we should talk about that. I don't know.
So,
So old business though too, we have.
yeah, I don't really think there's anything there. The only thing, the management committee does need to speak to the board in non-public about the superintendent's contract so that can move forward. So those would be the items that we would be going into non-public on. The audit committee report, I think we've had enough audit tonight. We all know where we're at.
Yeah, or not.
Well,
I could talk some more, but I won't.
Thank you.
I don't have a page in here for the, to go into non-public.
That's A and C.
Yeah.
I make a note of that.
So for the contract 2A and C.
Yeah.
Okay, so we would be taking a motion to go into non-public under 91A2. Okay, I don't have it.
A:2.
A:2.
A and C.
A and C.
So moved.
All right, we're gonna,
Wait, how did you, can you tell me how you did that? When you say so moved, is that the first or the second?
I'm sorry.
So moved is the second.
Okay.
No.
No.
Did you make a motion?
I said I need a motion.
No, Keith did. Keith is the
Keith-
first.
Keith is the first, we need the second.
Christine.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Keith and Christine.
44.
Okay, we're gonna roll call in, okay? Stephanie Arroyo,
Yes.
Amy's gone,
Not yet.
Keith McGuigan,
Yes.
Christine Dabrio,
Yes.
Susan Levinson, yes, Rosalind's gone, Kelly Gordon,
Yes.
Bruce Patrick,
Yes.
Debbie Hendrickson,
Yes.
Misty Lowe,
Yes.
Erica Helm,
Yes.
Carrie McMahon.
Yes.
Why we said yes.
9, 10, so we've got 10 in non-public.
Sorry, Sue, she's new and I just wanna make sure she understands why she said yes. Is you're agreeing that you wanna go into non-public and for those
91A.
reasons. Okay, so you're just saying you agree.
A:2
You're welcome.
usually isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's
I
what I
remember.
said.
A:2
Which is not
and then
what-
paragraphs A
Yeah,
and C.
I'm just looking at it non-public.
Okay, so we're in non-public.